Welcome and good evening to the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for April 17th, 2018. Before we begin, I know that some of you know that I work at Target Corporation, and as some of you may know, spring has been delayed and Target speak, it's backlogged. But I just got a text a little while ago, official from Target, that it's been shipped and it should arrive this weekend, if not by Monday. So,
Is it coming by Prime?
no, by Target, ship it from Target. Item number 1, roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Luce?
Here.
Councilmember Lehman?
Here.
Councilmember Whiting?
Here.
Councilmember Mokel?
Here.
Mayor Mars?
Here, thank you. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Any changes, additions, deletions? Mr. Reynolds?
Mr. Mayor, we have one insertion, 8A5. We have a new resolution number R2018, TAG 050. We had misidentified the property in there. That was the only change. It said Windermere as opposed to Canterbury. It is now corrected and in front of you.
So noted. Councilor Whiting?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move 8B1 up the agenda to before 8A1.
Okay. Is that a motion?
I'll make,
What are we gonna call it?
We'll just
we
call it
8A1A.
8A.
Yeah,
8A?
8A1A or something, yeah.
It was 8B1.
8B1 moving to 8A.
8A, 1A.
And I'll make that motion with that adjustment.
Yeah, I have a motion.
Second.
Second by Councilor Lehman. Any further discussion? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The modified agenda has been approved. Moving ahead to item number 4, the consent agenda. Councilor Whiting?
I would request 8B2 to be moved to consent.
Monthly financials, we see this every month in lieu of time, maybe, unless there were specific questions about this month's financials.
Remove 4B5.
Hmm?
Remove 4B5. I have a question on that.
4B5 off. Councilor Lehman?
Move the consent agenda as amended.
Okay.
Hand over here.
Councilor Lewis?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for a modified consent agenda. Before we vote, we would read the modified consent agenda into the public record. Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. These are the consent agenda items for April 17th of 2018. 4A1 approves the minutes of the April 3rd, 2018 meeting. 4A2 adopts resolution number R2018, TAX 052, which certifies the delinquent sewer and storm drainage accounts from 2017, adds a $25 administrative charge for collection with payable 2019 property taxes, and writes off 18 delinquent accounts totaling $39.83. 4A3 approves on-sale and Sunday liquor licenses for Millennium Operations, LLC, doing business as Valley Fair. 4A4 approves the suspension of City Code 114.11, consumption and possession of alcoholic beverages on Sunday through Thursday from 6 to 10 p.m. from May through October of 2018 for the Shakopee Eagle Club volleyball courts. 4A5 approves suspension of City Code 114.11, consumption and possession of alcoholic beverages on April 28, 2018 from 12 to 5 p.m. for a Pullman Club fundraiser. 4A6 approves the addition of one GIS coordinator position, grade 170, and eliminates one GIS specialist position, grade 160. 4B1 approves traffic control changes at the intersections of 2nd Avenue with Namkeg Street, Prairie Street, Dakota Street, Main Street, and Fuller Street. 4B2 approves the parking zone restrictions for no parking from here to corner signs on Fuller Street in all 4 quadrants at the intersection with Thomas Avenue and the Community Center driveway. 4B3 adopts resolution number 2018-047, which awards contract Northwest Asphalt Incorporated for the 2018 street reconstruction project, CIF TAC 18-003, in the amount of $1,778,588.88. 87 cents. 4B4 adopts resolution number 2018-053, which approves plans and orders the advertisement for bids for the 2018 bituminous overlay project, CIF TAC 18-002, and the Community Center back parking lot overlay project, PA TAC 18-13. And finally, 8B2 is the monthly financial review.
The consent agenda has been read into the public record. I have a motion and a second. There would be no further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving ahead then to item number 5. I'd like to call on any resident that would like to come forward and speak on an item not on the agenda. On an item not on the agenda. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and welcome. Seeing none, we will move ahead to item number 6, business removed from consent agenda, and 4B5, which is the Veerling Drive Phase 2 project. Matt?
Mayor, looking at this item, we identified 1.5 million. It's up to 2.5 million. Looks like it's using money from various funds, EDA 555,000, tree fund 84. I guess my question is, and I brought this up 2 meetings ago, this is telling me that our EDA dollars is going to basically cut in half. And I brought up that the purchase of this property originally was made with a interfund loan from the storm fund. So we recently did a transfer of fund balance, so that doesn't seem to be an option. And now if the EDA is cut substantially, that doesn't seem to be an option. So the question is, how are we and when are we going to repay this loan that purchased this property?
Michael?
Mayor and council members, the plan is we are actually meeting with some people to purchase the rest of the property. That will pay back the loan in its entirety. We have other funds then will be, originally we're going to net about $1 million. You're going to net about $500,000 now, cash in the bank.
And then what,
Michael, can you speak into the mic, please?
the difference of improvements, what raised the price $1 million basically, just, yeah, $1 million. What exactly raised the price of this project by almost double? And are we assessing any of these improvements back to the properties, benefiting properties?
Mayor and council, so the purchase price of the properties was calculated based on market that would include those improvements. So the people that are purchasing the 13 acres, if they purchase all of them, the cost of those improvements was built into their purchase price based on fair market value. So again, the original estimate was you would clear $1 million. Now you're going to clear $500,000 because of the cost of road improvements.
I guess I'm asking about the construction side, not the sales side.
Steve?
So Mayor and council members, good evening. So the original scope of the project was basically to complete the missing section of Veerling Drive. That was basically the road only. So the project has expanded. It also includes a new segment of roadway, the north-south segment of Lincoln Drive that will connect into the mall area to the north. So that is a out-of-scope portion of the project. We also added substantial streetscaping to the median and to the roundabouts along Veerling. And the stormwater part of the project, it was expanded to include the stormwater treatment required for the adjacent EDA parcels that Mr. Kursky just spoke about. So as far as assessing the adjacent parcels, that would be the $555,000 that would be paid by the EDA, which would typically be assessed to those adjacent parcels. If they were a developer, this would be the approximate cost that a developer would pay for this type of project.
So in this case, these properties aren't paying anything toward these improvements.
As Mayor and council members, as Mr. Kursky indicated, they are via the sale of the property. These costs are passed on through that component of it. But as far as a direct assessment to the adjacent parcels, that is being basically directly assessed to the EDA.
Last, Mayor, this picture, this, this roundabout looks pretty lavish to me.
Also, Steve, we would, or Michael, we would have another parcel or so that's still open for sale, is that correct?
Mayor and council, if we have about 13 acres left right now, we'll see what their proposal is in the next week or so when we get their offer. I think, I wasn't here when this was purchased, but when I came, I had assumed it had utilities and other things and that road was usable. I think as all of us have done our research, there were no utilities. The road was just asphalt over some gravel. So I think what we're actually building now is a city street that will serve a function. And as that was designed originally as a gateway into that area. So that's why it has a roundabout.
Okay. Counselor Lewis?
That road was originally a temporary road for the bridge construction. That's why it was built so quickly. And
So I mean, I think what Mayor and council will end up with is a street with a substantial life to it. I think to the standard that Mr. Lillehog's trying to get us to. That's why the tree fund is contributing money into this. There's substantial landscaping we're putting in, and the tree fund has a significant balance designed to enhance the community by putting these trees in.
Other questions of staff, Counselor Lewis?
do we currently have staff to take care of all these trees and what looks like either bushes or flowers? I mean, it looks like a lot of maintenance here.
Steve?
Mayor and council members, this will be something that we will be evaluating not only in this area, but enhancements in the downtown area. When we make investments into this type of streetscaping, we do need to make sure that we have the maintenance in place. So right now, this is a small part of what we will do. But when we look at the total picture, we will need to reevaluate here to ensure that we have the proper
Continue.
the proper maintenance in place, and if we run short on staff time, we do have some discretionary consulting services built into the budget if we can't handle it with our own staff.
More?
Part of the reason I ask that is if you're aware of the tunnel entrance on the downtown side of the overpass there. I've been getting a lot of complaints about the shrubbery and that down there. I mean, you know, it looked really nice at one point in time. It's just been let go. That's not on you because, you know, you've only been here a few months. But I think if we're going to start doing things like this, we need to bring those other areas into line with this, because to let one go and you know, put a ton of money in something else doesn't make sense.
Mayor and council members absolutely agreed. We're going to take a step back and look at the maintenance practices from the past and going into the future to ensure that we have the staff in place, as well as expanding our Adopt-A program. I think we have had some interest from some residents to actually adopt the area that you were just speaking of by the bridge. So that will help us bridge a little gap there that we have.
More questions?
Just in closing, I think we did a little bit here of putting the cart in front of the horse. You know, this has all been designed, and now we're going to check into the maintenance of it. You know, I think that should go hand in hand so that, you know, we know what we're getting into before we build it. That's only common sense or fundamental, I guess. So.
And Mayor and Council, I think Steve and I worked together with the landscape architect. We could have cut way back on the plantings, but it creates more of a weeding factor and other work they'd have to do. So the consultants thought denser plantings now with some substantial plants will cut back on the maintenance because they'll be able to choke out most of the weeds.
Other questions of staff? Counselor Lewis?
And just to comment on that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about planning ahead, because if you don't have to weed, you're cutting your maintenance way down.
Mayor and Council, we 100% agreed, and Steve and I had a long discussion about it because it would have saved a chunk of money, but I said, you're either gonna pay it now or we're gonna be paying it over the next 3 or 4 years in maintenance, and so there was a decision.
Or maybe 40, 50?
Yeah. So we decided instead to plant it denser and mulch it out to cut out the weeding.
Thank you.
I just think it's a waste of taxpayer money.
You're talking about the flower aspect, but actually
Back to the fluff.
the real key is pushing Veerling through to the west there
Right.
to 69.
Yep.
Key Collector Street, and we've already seen how over the many years Veerling, Veerling used to stop over there by the new fire hall and wasn't even connected to Marystown. And the importance of 17th Avenue running parallel and Veerling running parallel well is very important for our community. Counselor Luce?
Yeah, the only reason I'm kind of on Councilor Lehman's side on this, it's a lot of fluff, but, we do have parcels there to sell yet, and hopefully, this will enhance the area, and maybe we can attract some very good businesses, and, it'll bring that area back to life. I mean, it's a lot of money, but, we're hoping for 50 years down the road.
The question is, can you afford to attract businesses when you're paying for everything for the business?
I agree with you, I just,
So noted. Counselor Mokel?
I think the answer is you get weeds. And then weeds end up in the neighbor's yard, and your taxpayers get that in their yard, and they're fighting that and putting more money and down the sewer or to the water. And so it's one or the other. If you don't do anything, you get weeds. You don't plant anything. That's what you're coming after. And so I'm gonna make a motion to approve resolution R2018-055, approving plans and ordering the advertisement for bids for the Veerling Drive Phase 2 project, CIF tag 18 tag 007.
So I have a motion on the table.
I'd like to second it, but I do have a comment.
Oh, second it, and then
Yeah.
discussion?
No, not a discussion, just something I would like to ask of staff.
Yeah?
When you do run your numbers on the maintenance of this, if you could give us some kind of a breakdown of what it would be without the plantings and what it would be, with the planting. There's gotta be some savings, I understand that. We're paying up front. Hopefully we're gonna save in the backside. I'd just like to see some numbers on that, if that's possible.
Thank you. So a motion on the table and a second.
Yep.
Further discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you very much. Moving ahead then to item number 7A, public hearing for the vacation of a public right-of-way, public drainage and utility easements for Canterbury Park 5th and 6th edition. And Mark will present. Welcome. Oh, Counselor Mokel.
I'll make a motion to open a public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. Any discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, public hearing is now open. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, audience. You stated this is an application for vacation of public right-of-way and public drainage utility easements for property that's in Canterbury 5th and 6th editions. The site in question is identified on this slide. This is an area of Canterbury 5th and 6th edition. Next slide will show the particular easements and right-of-way in question. Along, again, on the south side here, this is Eagle Creek Boulevard. And with Canterbury 6th edition, there was plan for Shenandoah to be extended down to Eagle Creek. There's been a change in the plans with development of the Doran project. So there's no need for this public right-of-way anymore. And along with the Doran project, Canterbury is proposing Canterbury Park 7th edition. And discussions with staff and the developer, you can see there's quite a few easements in the area. And it was kind of decided that it might be best just to vacate those easements at this point, condition that we would get new easements and right-of-way with Canterbury Park 7th edition. Should the council approve this, we certainly would hold off on recording documents until we're for sure we've got the preliminary plat and plating of the 7th edition, so that we're not giving away easements and right-of-way without getting something in return. So we've shared that with the developer, and everybody's in agreement with the timing of that. There's one easement in particular, it's referenced in the report. Shakopee Public Utilities has a water main easement about this area. And I think I got another slide that might show that a little bit better. This is an enlargement. It's kind of hard to see. This is a big area, and there's a lot of activity in this area. Another reason why, just to kind of clean up the plats as we go forward. But we do want to retain that existing water main easement because it not only pertains to the Canterbury property, but also some of the adjacent properties, and SPUC has asked to keep that, and we certainly support that. So that is a condition should the council approve this vacation. Are there any questions?
Great. Thank you. Questions of staff? Counselor Lehman?
Do we know where if we vacate the road, do we know where the new road's going?
Yes, we do. And as
At what point do we get to see that?
yeah, you'll probably see some of that a little bit later today. We have the Canterbury Plan Unit Development along with the preliminary plat application, which will identify new roads and access points for that project. So you'll see that later, shortly after in tonight's meeting.
And on the visual here, the dotted line is the retention of an easement per the utilities request, is that correct?
In this, let's see here, if we're gonna go over here.
Oh, there we go.
This area here is an enlarged, so this is essentially the same area, just
Yeah.
to make it a little bit easier to see. And the water main is in this location. I can't quite read it from here, I believe it's written here, but it's in that location. So if we do vacate everything else, we'll clear up, but that easement will still show and will be shown on the 7th edition plat, should that plat go forward.
All right. Counselor Lewis?
Are they gonna need that for looping or something like that, or what's they're just keeping it just in case?
They keep it because it's again, it serves not just the Canterbury property, but it's also tied to the property to the west. So it's that applicant, we wouldn't want to vacate property from someone else that's outside of this request. So we want to retain that so that there's service capability for Canterbury project, and we still retain that ability to gain access to the adjacent property should we need it for serving that water.
And as far as we can tell, these vacations, there would be no other city need to have these, is that correct?
That's correct. We spent a lot of time on the proposed Canterbury Park 7th project in the Doran, and went over it many times with our engineering staff. With Shakopee Public Utilities, they have other easements that are part of this. Everybody, in reviewing the new preliminary plat for the 7th edition, we see we're going to get the easements that we're looking for. So based on that, we were satisfied that the vacation of these would be acceptable.
Very good. More questions of staff? More questions of staff? If not, thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
This is a public hearing. Would the development or like to come forward and make comment on this? Or this is a public hearing. If there's someone that would like to come forward and speak on this matter, on this vacation? Counselor Whiting?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Counselor Lewis?
Second.
I have a motion to close the public hearing in a second. Further discussion? Discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, public hearing's now closed. Counselor Whiting?
Make a motion to approve resolution number R 2018-048, a resolution approving the vacation of public right-of-way, Shenandoah Drive, and public drainage and utility easements for the property located north of Eagle Creek Boulevard, east of Shenandoah Drive Extended at Eastway Avenue, south of 4th Avenue East, and west of Veerling Drive at 12th Avenue East, and move its adoption.
I have a motion, Counselor Mokel.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? 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 All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Let's move ahead then to, we were gonna do under general business, we were gonna do 8A, which is the new 8B1, the Shakopee Academy sponsorship agreement. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It's my pleasure to introduce members of the Shakopee School District. Not only do we have Interim Superintendent Gary Anger here, but we have Director of Teaching and Learning, Nancy Thull, Shakopee High School Principal, Jeff Policki, Academy of Human Services Academy Principal, Scott Duran. So, as you know, I've been keeping council abreast of this particular issue for probably about a year now at least, as we've been fortunate to be involved, both myself and Chief Tate, Deputy Fire Marshal and others, also a few other people in the organization. We've been involved helping to guide the industry council, specifically for the council that is dealing with the Health and Human Services Academy. In 2014, just a little general background, the school district had determined that they wanted to change the way that they delivered educational services to our students, and part of that was in conjunction with Forward Next Learning Generation, Forward Next Generation Learning, excuse me. We were able to bring this forward, have members of our staff participate, and ultimately, in conjunction with the county, hopefully, sponsor the Health and Human Services Academy. At the last week's council meeting for the county board, they approved this particular partnership, and I made the decision at that point that if the county was going to move forward with it, I would bring it forward here for your look at it and make a determination as to whether or not it was something that the city should be partaking in. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Gary, and he can give you the specifics, but I can tell you from staff's perspective, we're pretty excited about this. We're not concerned about the amount of time it'll take. As we look at what we provide with our current CAP students and the value added that we get from that, we know that this is going to be a great partnership across the board. I should say that it's $300,000 in-kind dollars, which means that there's no actual money. Our hours would be assessed at $100 per hour towards that. Our part of that is $150,000, and again, as we look at the numbers, we have no problem that we're going to be able to take care of that in a 5-year period. And so with that being said, I'll turn it over to Gary, and thank you, sir, for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bill. I
Welcome.
appreciate it.
Welcome, Mr. Anger.
Thank you, Mayor Mars and council members. We're very appreciative to be here tonight. I personally am excited. My first meeting with all of you, and we're coming for a pretty big ask. But again, it's not a financial ask. This is an ask about a partnership with us, and at the champion level, along with the county in the area of the Academy of Human Services in our school district. This is kind of historic because other school districts that are using the academy model throughout the country, there is no relationship like this. There's no champion partner that is a city and or a county. And so we're really excited about this because we really felt like right from the get-go, Scott County and the city of Shakopee were the natural fit for us because of all the partnerships that have been happening in the past and all the potential partnerships that we feel like we can put together in the future. This is all about the kids. The academy model is about keeping the smaller learning communities and setting up opportunities for students to get experiences that will prepare them for the future, whatever that future might be. It might be college, might be the trades, but that's what we're planning on doing. I'm not going to speak too long because we want to give you plenty of time for questions today. I'm going to turn it over to Principal Policki, and I'll be back to the mic eventually here.
Thank you. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Mayor Mars and council members. Anytime I have an opportunity to speak to anybody about the Academy model, I get excited about it. So I've got Nancy over there to kind of keep my time going here because I know you've got a lot of business to attend to. But, thinking back to Mr. Reynolds talking about 2014, my family and I, we moved to Shakopee in 2013. And at the time, I was an assistant principal at probably the largest high school in the state of Minnesota. So my first view from this was from a parent standpoint. And then a couple years passed and the opportunity for a head principal position comes up, and now I'm finishing my second year as the head principal. And to be able to be a part of something at first I saw with my parent hat, and I still have my parent hat, but now to be able to come on board and now to be leading the charge, so to speak, it's very exciting. So what I want to do is just take just a brief amount of time just to really quickly talk about why the Academy model. And like I said, having come from a very, very large high school of 3,300 students plus, I was excited that Shakopee was really looking at how are we going to address our growth, but still keep our community intact and have a warm, welcoming, inclusive environment in this large setting. And the Academy model, one of those elements is you're creating those smaller learning communities into what someday is going to be a building with a capacity of 3,200 gulp number of students. And so being very mindful of that during this planning process while we are doing this large construction project is just very good forward thinking. With that, we're in the year 2018, and we look at, okay, we take this model, how do we incorporate it into 21st century learning? So having students having that high school experience be about making connections between what I'm learning in the classroom and what I'm going to take with me into the future. And I'll have a little slide that kind of shows traditional versus academy to kind of illustrate that a little bit more. Part of that is that importance is having that seamless transition. We talk about college and career readiness. That's the buzz phrase you hear in education nowadays is college and career ready. And the academy model has a strong focus. And when we talk about college, we're not talking about just traditional four-year college. When we have partnerships with our community and the city of Shakopee and Scott County, it's that opportunity to look at careers that are in the trades, some of those areas that we have huge demand for, and opportunities where we can retain students that will stay in the city of Shakopee, in Scott County, and find a number of opportunities, and the academy model provides this. And then finally, at the end of the day, it's helping students find that unique passion. It's really shedding a clear light on how what I'm doing now can really translate into a career in the future. So this next slide here is just a brief video that gets some good student input on what the academies are about.
Being a surgeon would be amazing because you get to interact with people on a daily basis and it helps save lives, which is something I would love to do.
Whatever I do, I'd like it to involve computers. I love taking them apart, diagnosing, fixing.
I want to be a photographer because I love photos. I like working with people, capturing moments to make them happy.
I want to pursue counseling when I'm older because I really like helping people.
I know I'm really interested in engineering, but I'm also kind of interested in being a pediatrician, and I was looking at law enforcement for a while, but I'm not really sure where I want to go.
I'm really interested in accounting because, I'm good at numbers.
I'm interested in engineering. I'm not sure what I want to do quite yet, but I would love to be one of the few females in the workforce.
The academies of Shakopee are comprised of small learning communities where each and every student can truly explore their interests, their passions, those things in life that excite them. After students' freshman year, they will have 6 academies to choose from. They are Arts and Communication, Business and Entrepreneurship, Engineering and Manufacturing, Human Services, Health Science, and Science and Technology.
People ask me all the time what sparked my interest in the academies of Shakopee. We all pick different paths along the way. And for them to be able to do that early on in high school when it's not costing them anything in the end, I think that's a real benefit for our students.
This has that alternative feel where you're going to have those small learning communities and environments, but within that you can go as deep as you want to go.
With the idea that they're able to come together, focus on something that's their passion.
And the strong commitment of the community in Shakopee to really connect with our schools is providing a unique opportunity that isn't available anywhere else.
So you're thinking about accounting, that is a great career choice.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
If you do your part, I promise I will be there to help you along the way to be successful.
I think that I'm a very easy person to talk to.
Oh, I totally agree. I think you would be a great counselor.
Thank you.
I support you, always. And I promise to help guide you in your high school experience.
I am the Academy of Human Services.
I am the Academy of Arts and Communication.
I am the Freshman Academy.
I am the Academy of Business and Entrepreneurship.
I am the Academy of Science and Technology.
I am the Academy of Engineering and Manufacturing.
I am the Academy of Health Science.
We are the Academies of Shakopee.
Fun stuff. So talking a little bit more about those small learning communities, really the idea of that is really nothing new. Dates back to the 1960s. And if you look at if you look at research and the outcomes of those small learning communities, you see very similar trends, familiar trends, improved attendance, decrease in behavior issues, that sense of belonging, which I think is paramount, especially when you're looking at this building of 3,200 students, graduation rates increasing, and then achievement gains for all of our students. Show you a couple of pictures here. So in our construction phase, all of our academies, all 7 academies, are going to have they're obviously in different segments of the building, but they are all defined areas. So if you look here, this would be the entrance to the Human Services Academy. You see the sponsor logo, so it would say Human Services Academy, Scott County, City of Shakopee, and that is an area inside there would be, in addition to your elective classes, all your core classes, all of those are taking place right in that area of the building, giving you your small learning community feel. Some of this is hard to read, but I wanted to just go over some highlights here. This is a sheet that we have for all 6 of the academies. This is the Human Services one. And this shows you from our elective classes the different pathways that are available in each of the academies. So on the left-hand side, really that academy experience begins in middle school. So for example, I have a daughter at the Pearson 6th Grade Center. Right now she is taking that class up there. It says Be the Change. That's an elective class that she is taking right now. So 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, she's going to get exposure to these elective courses that represent all the different areas of the academies. Then when students get to high school, they are still going to have it's still high school. They're still going to have a high school experience. You're going to take your core classes. You still got to take English and science and math and social studies. But within that, one of the minimum graduation requirements is that we want students to choose one program of study. So in blue, you see the programs of studies in human services. What we want to do is have students take an introductory level course, an intermediate course, and an advanced course. In reality, they're going to have plenty of room in their schedule to not only take this one sequence, which typically represents a 1-semester class, but they will also have the opportunity to take classes in all of the other academies. So just because you're in human services, if there's something in business and entrepreneurship that you like or health sciences, students can, those classes are wide open, just as they are now for different electives to take. The idea behind this is that instead of just it all being about a buffet style, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, when we talk about having, maybe a tangible skill or something, a unique talent that they can move on into college and career, by doing that introductory, intermediate, and advanced sequence, that helps achieve that. One area that's cool about all the academies is we have around the building what's called signature spaces. And one of the areas in human services is we have a law and legal lab. And so this is a rendering right here of our law and legal lab. We actually have a room up on the 3rd floor, which is set up. It's got the judge's bench, the kind of the whole courtroom setting. And then if you flip that room around the other way, there's an area there with some counter space where you can kind of set up like a CSI lab area. And so that's one of those areas. As we're building this school, we want to create spaces that really brings that learning to life. And with the partnerships, with all that we have in Shakopee, it really creates a very unique experience for students. So one more slide, and then I'm going to hand it over back to Gary, kind of talking about that. Okay, all of us in this room can relate to traditional high school. How is the academy model, how does that different? well, we're still going to have a capacity someday of 3,200 students in our school, but if we're going to have them broken down into those small learning communities. Historically, school has been broken up by departments. You got your math department, your science department, your social department. In this model, we're grouped by academy, where you have all of those areas, cores and electives, broken up that way. We have core classes based on state standards. We still have core classes based on state standards. But when you think of the application piece of how learning is incorporated, you're bringing in that flavor or that flair into that academy. So hopefully you're triggering some of that intrinsic internal motivation in students. And then the nice thing in the academy model is that you're more likely, because we have teachers are grouped into academy teams, in your home academy, your likelihood of having another teacher throughout your high school career, that is a better chance as opposed to just a traditional model where we're spread out all over the place. So that's kind of a brief synopsis of what the Academy is about. I'm going to kick it back to Gary to talk about the Academy Champions. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was kind of brief. We won't give him brief all the way around, but we didn't give him the hook either. So what is the ask? The ask is that you consider a motion this evening to join Scott County as the Academy Champion for the Academy of Human Services. So that's what we're here to ask for. What does that mean? That means that we will partner with you in any number of different ways, from job shadowing to internships to apprenticeships, you name it. It's really going to be about what we create as a school district and as a city and county as partners. So what questions do you have?
Questions? Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I've got a couple questions. First one is the trades. I feel the trades are very important, and I didn't see them in your slide presentation per se. It was more professional services. Where do the trades fit into?
They fit in all 6 of the academies, to be honest with you. And Jeff did allude to the trades. Nancy, do you want to come? Looks like Nancy's itching to come and talk about that one. She wants a little time.
I'd like to talk a lot about this too, but I'm shorter at it than Jeff. So when you look at our trades, you see a lot of it in our Engineering and Manufacturing Academy. We've actually had great community involvement in helping us to develop a couple of programs to study that are around construction, as well as electricity and electrical systems. And another area that we've been focusing on is kind of that, what we would call fabrication area. We're working with metals, wood, all different types, plastics, that kind of thing. So there are 3 specific programs of study in 2 in engineering and manufacturing, 1 in the Science and Technology Academy that are very specific to the trades.
I see it kind of twofold. One, you have the engineer person like ours that does the stuff on paper and knows the flow rates and all these other technical things. That's the technical side. But then you have our Public Works Department that actually gets their hands dirty to do the job.
Yep.
And the trades, I think, are very important in our country, whether it's a plumber, a welder, you know, somebody that's grading a road and putting down blacktop or whatever. So I would like to see a good emphasis. I know your CAPS program is kind of geared that way. So
I'll add one more thing along with the trades. We have a list of approximately 90 local businesses that want to work with us. In some aspect, they're not prepared to help us at the champion level, but the high majority of those businesses are involved in the trades. And so really the sky's the limit with our opportunities in the trades.
And I'll help in the trades in my field. Second question, Mayor, if I may. And this is kind of an overarching question. The community has been asking quite a bit of what the total cost of this academy program is, not including the in-kind services. Do we know what that number is?
Well, I can address the costs. As you're all aware, we're in the midst of some budgetary changes right now, at $2.6 million in budget adjustments. And within those adjustments, there's some increases at the high school. But those increases are born out of the fact that we're adding an entire grade level of kids, the 9th graders going to the high school next year. So we feel like as far as costs are spoken for, that we're done, you know, with anything that has to do with the academy. There are not additional costs. We're running a high school, just like Jeff said.
You're using existing staff, whether you had the academies or not, to run the academies?
For the most part, yes. There are exceptions, though, not every single position.
And then my last question was, one of your slides had a line of social injustice, and I just want to make sure I understand what that means. Is that the 4-to-1 I'm constantly up against, or would that be classified as social injustice?
Yep. We had that question at the county, too. Yep.
You know, and what we said to the county, too, and this shows the importance of our councils, but that decision on course titles are a challenge because you have to guess what kids will kind of tweak their interests, and it's sad the amount of time that we even spend discussing course titles with our industry councils. What happened is that decision was made after one of our council meetings as we were preparing course development plans with our teachers. And we have gotten since feedback from our council that they think we kind of went astray with that title. And that's really what the partnership is all about. That class happened to not fill. And when the county raised some of the concerns about the title itself, not necessarily with the content of the course, I said that's the kind of feedback we need, you know, because we can go back and it's a continuous improvement process. And that's why it's important to have not just the voice of our staff heard, but the voice of our community too, and our partners to help us figure out what is the best way to help our kids transition to post-secondary and career.
Mayor, can I, just to close my comments, when I was younger, 16-ish I would say, I had the opportunity to go to White Bear Lake, I think it was 9/11 was their number on that school. And they basically, it's kind of like this, it wasn't called this, but they basically took young people and tried to figure out what their natural abilities were, what their future desires were, and things like that. And they try you in different areas to find out where your strengths and weaknesses are. And it was a great experience. And they were actually correct, because I did go into that field, stayed in that field, worked all the way up that field to owning my own. So, you know, when you can capture them young people and really find out what it is they want to do and where their strengths are, and then give them that opportunity, it not only helps them be successful, but it creates success in our economy. So it's kind of a win-win. Just a personal comment.
Thank you. Well taken.
Councilor Luce?
Yeah, I guess I have to take a little exception to that 4-to-1. It's a lot of times 3-to-2.
Well, that's still social injustice, isn't it?
We're just trying to get along here.
Yeah. I do also with the trades. That's been my field all my life. And I do think, you know, the more you can integrate the students into a trade, these trades are paying darn good money right now. I mean, I'm guessing a lot of the trades are paying better than your teachers are paying, you know. So, you know, they're nothing to laugh at or ridicule, because they're doing very well and they're all needed. I mean, we're always going to need plumbers. We're always going to need electricians, you know, mechanics. We're going to need them. Somebody's got to fix the stuff. Somebody's got to maintain buildings. So, you know, it's all a necessity. You know, not everybody can run a computer, but I can't run a computer, but most people can't fix plumbing. So.
Very good. Bill Reynolds has been waiting.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, members of council. In regards to both Councilor Lehman and Councilor Luce's comments, my hope is that we can get people in our Public Works Department so we can show kids what it is they do, because there are going to be some kids that want to do that. And you know, I'd love to see kids throughout every piece of this organization figuring out if this is something they want to do. It's a great opportunity to showcase what government does. A lot of times people don't understand, and you know, it might be interesting to have a high school kid in the cab of a truck as it's out plowing in the middle of a blizzard, to kind of show them, you know, kind of the things that our people are dealing with.
We're not going to have any more snow days, so.
But I think that's a critical part of this, and if the council approves this, that's certainly what I'll be looking for.
Councilor Mokel.
I am going to actually segue into another population of Shakopee. I know that you guys have put out the 6th through 8th grade. Have you talked about how you're going to transition the Sachs kids that go to 8th grade into this program.
So last year, we had a chance to talk with the SACS principal about some of those. I know we've talked about working in conjunction with them to maybe take a look at some of their offerings that they offer within their school in 7th and 8th grade as maybe possibilities in terms of profiling some of the work at the high school. I will say we haven't had a chance to connect with them yet this year, which I would put on myself, quite frankly. But it's a good reminder that we need to continue that conversation. So we have typically visited their PTOs and had conversations with them about the changes on an ongoing basis, but we need to make that connection this year as well.
I'll also add that when we talk about the academies, everybody tends to only think about the high school. We really see this as a pre-K-12 mindset, that we want to provide as many real activities for all of our students, all the way across their Shakopee Schools experience.
And just to follow up, Mayor, I want to say thank you for that, because I know that Julie Moran, who is the principal of Shakopee Area Catholic Schools, was involved in the next generation very early on, and I appreciate that you included that. But thank you.
Councilor Lewis?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to follow up on some of the conversation that was happening over here about your, on your government and public policy and the social injustice. I think that's a good, titles are an issue, but there is a lot of issues-based, things in developing how people, come across on trying to sell an issue-based observance. So I think maybe it is in the title, but I think that's part of, a good part of that public policy. So I just wanted to throw that in for that. But
yeah, we like the content of the course. It may be as simple as calling it social justice instead of injustice. But
teaching kids how to organize and get their people and their debate kind of in order. So.
Not knocking Mr. Reynolds' comment about the snowplow. Let's let them see the good parts of the job before we scare the heck out of them with that one. That is a extremely difficult job when the snow is blowing and it's 10 inches deep and you got cars in your way and parked cars, and these guys have to have eyes in the back of their heads. And I want to commend them for this last snowfall and the previous snowfalls. They did a pretty remarkable job for what we had come down in a short time. So,
I just thought I'd add that we do have a simulator. I think we still have that out at the Scale Training Center. Maybe we can get access to that for them. Keep them out of the plows, but give them the opportunity to try it.
Councilor Lewis?
Simulator's nothing like the
real
thing.
I know, but maybe for the kids.
A little safer.
All right. Councilor Lehman?
I'll offer resolution R218-054, authorizing appropriate staff to enter into an agreement with the Shakopee Public Schools for sponsoring and naming academies of human services.
Okay, I have a motion. Councilor Lewis?
I'll second it, and hopefully, the city and everybody else partnering will benefit like we did with the CAPS program with our logo model. That saved us a bunch of money and gave them some great experience, and they did a fantastic job. So,
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but if you look back up on the TV, that was designed by your high school students. Yeah, pretty remarkable. That saved me about $12,000.
My comments, education is a big topic in our state and right here in our district. And I think that's important. The education of our youth is very important. 21st education they talk about, the unique interest in drawing to the passion at a younger age where they can try to stay focused. The vanishing Minnesota worker, shortage of workers and in certain fields. Anytime that we can expose students to opportunities and find that passion, I think that's vital. I think the level engagement at the younger age is perfect. A wide spectrum. I was talking to Mr. Reynolds the other day. You're right. Send our public works people out to teach a class. Our director of public works, finance, human resources, administration, every little field. These are jobs that sometimes get overlooked, just like other jobs, but let's train our youth. Let's do it efficiently, let's do it effectively, and I'm looking forward to this partnership, because I really think it showcases what we can do here between the county and the city to offer this in-kind. Councilor Luce?
Yeah, I'm not calling the vote. I just want to make the comment that let's let these people get going. I think we've got a 5-0 vote, and let's just take it and let them have a good evening.
Councilor Lehman?
I would just point out that past practices aren't always bad. Learning math tables in your head to make change is probably a good thing. We all encounter that every day.
Oh, sure do. All right, motion on the table. Second, further discussion. Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
We thank you very much and are excited about this opportunity and partnership.
Absolutely. Let's move ahead then to 8A1 Comprehensive Plan Amendment, re-guide property at 12321 Marystown Road to commercial. Mark will present. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you stated, this is an application.
In the mic.
Thank you. Application for a comprehensive plan amendment for property property located out in northeast corner of Marystown Road and 17th Avenue. It's a property that was recently annexed into the city. When it was annexed into the city, it did not come with zoning and guiding. So that's the purpose of these next two cases, is to establish zoning and guiding for this property. As it currently exists, there's a single-family home and two vacant parcels. They're owned by Greg Powers and Irene Powers Trust, and they are looking to potentially develop the property. So in order to do anything, they need to, again, establish the comprehensive plan, which as part of the 2030 plan, you can see on this slide, identifies the site. 2030 comp plan identified it for future commercial. However, with that 2030 plan, because this area was outside of the city, and with the orderly annexation agreement that we have with Jackson Township, the Met Council could only establish this as a suggested guiding. We did not have a staging plan approved as part of that OA. We do have that now, so as we go forward in the 2040 plan, I don't think we'll have to be so concerned with this. We'll address it as part of our 2040 comp plan, but again, this was not part of the 2030 plan. And we are now going forward with a request to guide this property for commercial, consistent with what that suggested guiding was in 2030, and consistent with what the property adjacent to it is guided. So ask that the council support this request. Any questions?
Questions of staff? So just to outline, this is in regard to this parcel, this is a two-step plan. The first action item here that we're discussing is the re-guide, and then the next item right behind it is the real rezone to the zone from the classification, right?
And that is correct. We need to establish the comprehensive plan land use for this before we can establish zoning. So, as you say, the next case log will be the rezoning request.
Councilor Whiting?
The other, Mr. Mayor, the other B1 property around that, is that still owned by the school district?
It was, I believe there's been a potential transaction of that property. I have not myself talked to anybody about any kind of development, but I know the property owner, Mr. Powers, is looking to develop this property and has a realtor and is seeking development opportunities. And again, this plan area shows it as commercial, so that's the request before you.
Other questions of staff? Questions of staff? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Whiting?
I make a motion to approve resolution number R 2018-043, a resolution approving the comprehensive plan amendment and property located at 12-321 Marystown Road to commercial land use and move its adoption.
I have a motion of Counselor Lehman.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving ahead then, 8A2, the rezoning of property at 12321 Marystown Road. Counselor Whiting?
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 02018-0055, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 12321 Marystown Road to Highway Business B1 zone and move its adoption.
I have a motion, and Counselor Mokel?
A second.
Okay. Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, just one question. Why does it say the comp plan has single-family residential as suggested when the plan that's submitted shows it as business?
Because it was residential.
Because it was residential reserve?
The comprehensive plan had identified this property, it's part of the 2030 plan, as commercial, as identified in this area, that pink. This was shown as commercial as part of the 2030 plan. Again, it was suggested guiding because it was in Jackson Township. So now that it's been annexed into the city, we're following through consistent with that 2030 plan had showed this should be guided, and we're asking for
Mayor,
commercial guiding.
I think he missed my question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On the first page of your document, two lines above introduction at the bottom, it says comp plan, single-family residential suggested.
That would be an error. It should say commercial, so.
Because what's on the map says it was commercial or business.
Yeah, that should have read commercial, so I apologize for that.
Okay, and then I'm looking at the criteria, and almost every one of them has that it's consistent with the approved 2030 plan, even though this was township land. Counselor Luce?
Just a little correction, I believe when Counselor Whiting read out the ordinance number, he added a 5, he said 5-5, I believe, just so we get it correct.
Oh, 05?
05, and I believe you read 055.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take that as an amendment, friendly amendment.
Second.
Friendly amendment to correct the true numbering of the ordinance by the second and the motion maker. Further discussion? Discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes, thank you. Moving ahead then to 8A3, comprehensive plan amendment, re-guide property at 12800 Marystown Road. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you. This is almost an exact mirror of what you just saw. Again, property that was recently annexed into the city. Friendship Church, located in the northwest corner of Marystown Road. It's just further south of the property we were just looking at, and then bordered on the south by County State Aid Highway 78. Again, property was just recently annexed into the city. You can see on the slide where the church is located. They do have some at this point, extra or available developable land, and that was the purpose of them wanting to bring the property in to the city. And again, the 2030 plan had shown this area as, again, same scenario. It was in the township, so it wasn't actually guided at that time. But with this request now that's in the city, we're looking to guide this for single-family residential purposes. And should the council support that, would follow with the request to rezone for R1B, which is single-family residential. Again, the site is a church. That zone in the city is an appropriate zone for a church use. We see that quite often in Shakopee. So there's no issues, concerns by anybody with proposed guiding and zoning. So ask for the council support on this request.
Councilor Lehman?
I guess I'll ask the question, Mayor. Is sewer and water available to this site?
Councilmember Lehman, not at this point. So they are only beginning the process to just bring the property, if the property's been brought into the city, right now there's no zoning or guiding on it, so they want to establish that. That doesn't mean that it's ready right today for development. As we've talked, especially in discussions with orderly annexation agreement, we won't see development in this until services are brought down to it. So we're not going to extend services out to the site until it's the right time and it follows a natural procession.
So to clarify even on Councilor Lehman's, then with, obviously services aren't available, they would not be able to plat this, is that correct?
Not at this time. Well, the property, when it was in the county, was already platted as one parcel.
Subdivided, I guess.
Yeah.
I should-
Now, should they come in, you know, it's with R1B, the property is fine as it is. Should they want to plat it, as you can see, I'm going to move ahead to the next slide. Kind of getting ahead of myself here, but you're going to see a project later on the agenda called Windermere South that is proposing a single-family residential development for this property in question. Again, utility services are up at 17th Avenue with the original D.R. Horton Windermere project. And just like this plat, when this comes in, I might ask for preliminary plat approval, but we're not gonna, we're not gonna look to develop the south portion until services are based on market driven are brought down to that area. So
Our deliberations on our orderly annexation is exactly what we talked about.
Yeah.
This can get guided and rezoned, but until services are available.
Well, I think we have sewer across the street in Beckridge Estates, don't we?
Now we do.
Yeah.
Right.
Councilor Mokel?
Well, and I was just going to point out that Spuck is looking at the existing R2 as the location for their house.
For what?
For their station. So.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Other questions of staff? Questions of staff? Councilor Luce?
This might be a little bit outside the zone of staff, but this will be the taxable property, or will this stay church property once, are they planning on building homes that they're gonna have their people in, I guess, my question.
Well, as they're shown now, the entire property is owned by the church. So I think as they've mentioned to us, they would like to see some potential development of some of those areas. I'm going to go back to that first aerial just a little bit easier to see. So they have some land over here and have some land on the north side. Not to say that they're looking to develop it now. It would take some discussions at the church council, but at least would give them an opportunity that should that other development occur and start to bring services down here, that they could look at potentially developing those for residential lots in the R1B zone. So not that that's going to happen today. It's going to take some time for utilities to get down there, but it at least gives them that opportunity. So we're just trying to establish the guiding and zoning so they can move forward.
Councilor Lehman?
I think the question that he was asking was, would the houses be considered tax exempt because they're church use? And my interpretation of the answer would be no, because the church building itself is.
Yeah. If they sell those off for single-family lots privately owned, those would be taxed just like any other residential structure in town. Sorry about that.
Very good. Councilor Mokel?
I'll make a motion approving resolution number R2018-042, a resolution approving the comprehensive plan amendment of property located at 12800 Marystown Road to single-family residential land use, and move its adoption.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Whiting. Further discussion? Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving forward then to 8A4, the actual rezoning of this property that was just mentioned at 12800 Marystown Road. Council Mokel?
I'm just going to move this along and say approve ordinance number 02018-004, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 12800 Marystown Road to urban residential R-1B zone and move its adoption.
I have a motion, Counselor Loose.
Second.
I have a second. Further discussion. This is actually the rezone. The previous vote was the re-guiding. Further discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry, Counselor Loose?
could we get a recess for 10?
Second.
I have a motion for a recess for 10 minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. We'll stand in recess for 10 minutes. started again, please? Reconvene the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for April 17, 2018. Moving ahead then, we are on 8A5, resolution for Canterbury Park PUD amendment and 7th edition preliminary plat. Michael, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the proposed preliminary plat. Councilmember Lehman asked earlier where the new road would be. Here it is platted out. Mr. Lilhog and the consultants from Canterbury have been working on the traffic study, and we can guarantee you the line on the left side of the screen here will stay, but the line into Canterbury's property might change depending on the traffic study shows for the width. So we had to set for sure a minimum right-of-way, which I think we're pretty happy with right now. They've worked very closely with Mr. Lilhog and his staff to ensure we have enough right-of-way here for the roundabout and for the road. This is the PUD amendment proposal. This is the first phase of the 2 buildings at Canterbury. You can see, here's the shadow study. All of the shadow actually falls onto Canterbury's property, which would be a ponding that would be up on the top here, so none of it falls on any of the adjacent residential. And here's the proposed layout for phase 1. This is a little unusual, not only for Shakopee, but for the Twin Cities. Because of the amount of bedrock here, this project actually has a parking garage, and the parking garage is surrounded by units and then a different facade along the side, so it won't look like a parking garage. But you can see that there's a central core here with the parking garage, and then again the units surrounding it. This is the upper floor, so you'll actually be able to park on the level of your unit and then walk into your unit. So it's a little unusual. The roof, this is the clubhouse. This is a highly amenitized project, as you've heard all along. This current proposal shows indoor pool, outdoor pool. You'll see some details of it in a minute in some renderings and then a video. Lots of common space that can be rented out and used by the residents. These are the proposed elevations for the first phase, a mixture of brick, hardy, metal, asphalt shingle roof. And this is the proposal for the clubhouse, which similar materials, but a pretty grand entrance for the project. And then here's the proposal for the gatehouse. So this is actually a gated property. There's a lane, it came up at the Planning Commission, so there is a through lane for residents that would have a key fob or some sort of control so they don't have to wait. There's access for people that are visiting on this side at the guardhouse. And then, I go back here. On the property, there is a access gate up at this corner to allow people out of the project that are residents. So here's some renderings of what the project will look like. There's a grand entrance both on this side and the back side for residents. Here you can kind of see the rendering of what the pool area will look like. And this is the clubhouse kind of grand entrance. They'll have a lawn out in front. So you're looking at tonight the preliminary plat. The changes they're asking for is a 6-foot fence in the PUD. Slight parking ratio change. The height is allowed in this zone because in major rec zone, you get the ability to have taller items because you have things like Canterbury's racetrack, which is many stories tall. The setback meets those requirements, and the density meets the requirements of 28 units or less. Phase 1 of the development is 489 overall stores, 402 bedrooms. There's 1.21 stalls per bedroom, or 1.65 stalls per unit. Their current market demand, Twin Cities wide, is 1.3 to 1.4 stalls per unit. And you can see there are 3 projects, the Moline, 610 West, and the Reserve, are all at from 1 to 1.46. So this actually will be above the other projects that they have in the market. And the applicant has a video, if you'll hold on 2 seconds here.
Okay. Hi there, Mayor and council
Welcome.
members. My name is Cody Dietrich with Doran Companies. We are the developer and will be the owner of the project that we are proposing tonight. We are partnering with Canterbury Park as well, and Randy Sampson is here with Canterbury Park, and I have Tony Keekley with me here from Doran as well. We want to say thank you to Michael and the rest of the staff for all the work they've done on this project, and also to the Planning Commission for recommending approval coming to this point. Looking through the staff report, we agree generally with what has been proposed by Michael Kursky, and now we have a video of the project that we're proposing that we can show you. So here at the starting point is our gatehouse. We have the 2 entries that Michael talked about. One will be for the residents and one will be for the guests and any other delivery packages, anything like that. Then you come into the development where we'll have a grand entrance that's landscaped into our clubhouse area that has a porte-cochere for resident drop-off and pickup. As we move north on the site, you'll see the residential building, which has 6 legs of it wrapping around the parking garage. Here's another porte-cochere for the main entrance of the project. And now we are wrapping around the east side of the project going north. And in this side, we added more landscaping, took away parking from our original plan to add more of an aesthetic appeal from the street, so there's not just surface parking lots out looking and causing any issues. As we move to the back side, or the north side of the project, we are coming up to our parking ramp where you can see. I'll pause it here. One more second. So over here is where you enter into the parking ramp. The parking ramp is still 3 stories, even though the building's now 4 stories. To the right of that, we have an appendage connected to the parking ramp that will house our maintenance building, and we'll have different things in there, including storage of vehicles for maintenance. And as Michael talked about before too, there is a fake side to the parking ramp that basically emulates the rest of the multifamily development, so it looks the same. There are windows that'll actually see through into the garage, and the facades will match up, so it's similar aesthetic appeal. And as we move to the other backside of the project, we have a secondary main entry with another porte-cochere there for similar entrance for the people who live on this side of the building. Just full access for the building. We want to make sure that all the tenants are taken care of. That's part of the why we went to the 4 stories, so the distance for tenants to travel to the amenities or anything like that is shortened, and it's not such a sprawling space. So as we continue around the west side of the project, we'll be coming into the back amenity area with the pool deck and everything like that. The back side we show landscaped, and this will be fully landscaped with possibly a dog park added in there. And as we come over here, you will see in the courtyard of the residential building that we have a putting green, grilling station, bocce ball court, and then over further to the right, we have an entertainment suite, which we treat like a dining room or something that the residents can then rent out or reserve for free of charge. And as we drop back down and behind the clubhouse, we have our pool, we have our outdoor hot tub, our outdoor amenity space, grilling stations, and you can see the back of our clubhouse. And we can answer any questions if there are any.
Questions of the applicant? Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I actually have a host of questions. And I don't know who can answer these best. Does this property have 1 or 2 PUDs?
1 PUD. We're amending the whole PUD for the Canterbury parcel.
I asked because early on in this process, I remember Mr. Sampson saying he wanted the new areas that are going to be developed to be separate from Canterbury so that they were not connected with the gaming commission or something like that. So that's why I asked.
So Councilmember Lehman and Mayor and Council, the racetrack is not part of this PUD. That's in a separate holding corporation.
Okay, so we have 2 separate PUDs?
We have one, this would be the confusing part, there's one overlaying, we don't have PUD zoning yet, so you have an overlay, so the overlay kind of hovers over all, I think it's 400 odd acres that are in the Canterbury section. As these various projects come forward now, you're going to be amending the PUD for that very specific area. So what you're doing tonight is amending whatever was on that originally. I think there was a farm and some other areas on this section of the PUD, and we're building the road into it. So as more projects come forward, you'll keep amending this PUD. So you could have probably 20 or 30 amendments as you build out this project.
To the overall PUD, though.
Correct, Mayor and Council. So you're going to see basically a puzzle kind of grow out now along the city streets and the roads as they're built, because every piece you're going to have to see, because as we amend this PUD, a separate application will have to be brought forward.
And what, Matt, Councilor Lehman, I think you're correct. This is the action tonight is a PUD amendment, and then and preliminary plat.
Yep.
But same question, so I believe we're modifying, amending the overall plat.
Well, the reason I ask is because at some point, the PUD on Canterbury Track should be amended so that some of their currently allowed uses are modified so they're not conflicting with the uses that are being added. You know, if you're putting residential next to, you don't want to have, let's say, motorcycle races at midnight or rock concerts at midnight. You want the noise to stop at whatever time is consistent with where a heavier use is next to residential use. You don't want to have unscreened storage next to residential. It's okay when it's in an industrial setting by itself, maybe. So when do we?
So Mayor and Council, the plan is, I have the larger kind of PUD showing here, is that right now they do meet our zoning ordinances stop at 10 o'clock. So Canterbury is no different than any other facility we have. They don't go past 10 o'clock. Mr. Sampson can talk about this, but particularly if he's had discussions with Dorn about noise coming from over here. They're building this to a much higher standard, double insulated walls and windows, because they realize they're next to a racetrack. And so whether it's daytime or nighttime, they don't want people to get disturbed. And his plan, and he can talk about it more in detail, as we tear down some of the barns and reorganize this area, he plans on moving some of that sort of to the backside that the public can't see in Canterbury. Right now, it's kind of at the front door. When you drive in, you see everything. The goal of this project basically is to eliminate all of that and move it to the backside where it can't be seen.
Okay, next question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we don't have our traffic study complete yet, so we're gonna defer road widths and capacities until that's done, correct?
Mayor and Council, so this road right now, they worked with Mr. Lillehog on widening this so that we have the potential to have enough lanes to handle the volume. So we're taking as much right away, I think, as was projected for these uses.
But, well, I guess what I'm asking is, once we have our traffic study done, I don't want to go back and have to rebuild the road that's already been built.
Correct. So the traffic study, I believe the first draft should be done in about 30 days. So they're not turning a shovel out here. We're a long ways from construction.
Okay.
We'll be back to, Mr. Lillehog will bring that traffic study back and show kind of what the proposed layout is for the entire project and kind of a phasing plan, because we just probably cannot build this one little section. There'll have to be some work up here and then some work down on Eagle Creek.
I assume the same applies to the stormwater and the sewer plans?
Mayor and Council, I think we're pretty good on stormwater. Canterbury, when they originally laid the whole project out, knew at some point that we would be doing changes here, and so they are doing a large pond up here adjacent that they will own, and they have reciprocal operating agreements with Dorn for maintenance. They're also planning another large pond up here. They already have some existing ponding down here, so I think we're good on stormwater. You notice tonight we had got rid of some of the easements back here. We'll be putting in new, Spuck is going to be undergrounding one of their high powered line at their expense, and then we'll also be bringing in new water, sewer, and Spuck will be bringing in new pedestals for future power for the rest of the site when this road is done.
Okay. And then, do we know which roads are public and which ones are private? And then what infrastructure is eligible for taxpayer TIF funding and which are not?
Mayor and Council, all the roads in Canterbury are planned to be public roads. Right now, this road as drawn will be a public road.
Okay, and going into the development is private, correct?
Correct. So once you get in off this roundabout, from beyond this roundabout, it's private. So all that gatehouse, all the driveway into that gatehouse is all private. All the roads that you saw in the video are all private. They belong to that project.
And they're not eligible for TIF funding?
Correct.
Okay. Any other, what other infrastructural costs are public and which ones are private? Do we know what that is? Do we have a list of these things?
Everything you see here that's going to be publicly paid for is this road that comes down through here to this intersection to here. That is a public road and we paid for out of TIF.
Okay. Are we building roundabouts like we just saw up here at Veerling and 69?
We haven't come, you'll notice the original plan had a lot more roundabouts. Right now, there's just one shown at the Dorn project. What that's going to look like, I think, is really up to the city engineer and our consultants, and then we'll be back to you with that exact detail.
Okay. Do we know what 83 is going to be categorized at? Currently, it's a collector. Do we know if it's going to be a minor arterial, or won't we know that until the traffic study is complete?
Mayor and council members, the functional classification of Canterbury Road, County Highway 83 won't change with anything we're doing with this project. And off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly what type of arterial it is, but we can get back with you on that. But it's not expected to change the functional classification.
So the spacing of whatever that top road was, Berkshire, is that what it's called?
Baronshire.
Baronshire. That point in 12th Avenue will meet any kind of spacing requirements?
Mayor and council members, I would say based on either the existing or a proposed functional classification, that the spacing in this existing corridor would be a little substandard in any regard. So we will be working with the county to get the best fit, to consolidate access that's out there and to improve the access points that are out there to better meet the county's goal with access spacing. But in every regard, we're probably going to be, it's not a new corridor. We're not starting with a clean slate. Right. So we're going to improve it.
Okay, two more questions. And my understanding, whatever you approve for a preliminary plat, if your final plat is consistent with the preliminary plat, you can't not approve the final plat. Is that a correct statement, Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, yes, that is basically correct. What you approve at the preliminary plat is binding on the council at the final plat stage.
So
Can't change rules.
The final plat can come back the same as the preliminary plat, and you'd be required to approve it.
Yes, it's 99% you would have to be. Possible some state regulation could change or something, but.
Okay. And there seems to be just a lot missing here. We don't have a developer's agreement. I don't know exactly what we're paying for $33 million.
So Mayor and council, this again is a preliminary plat. We'll be bringing forward to you a developer's agreement, the traffic study, and a redevelopment agreement probably in the next 60 days. But again, they're not moving forward on this tomorrow. And so one of the reasons to do this was so they could start doing additional civil engineering work on their site to get this thing moving forward.
And then my last question, what's the process to get the school district's tax dollars removed from the TIF district? They're, we all know what kind of financial situation they're in, and for our TIF district to compensate or their tax revenue on future development, I have a problem with that.
Mayor and council, when the actual TIF financial plan comes back to you, that would be the time to have that discussion. So that budget will have all the road costs, how it's financed out. It'll be a pretty complete document. So you'll have the development agreement and the redevelopment agreement, and those will all be tied to the traffic study. And I think our council's working on shooting for 60 days to have all that wrapped up.
My question's actually to our Councilor Lehman. The traffic study is of importance, and we've talked about it here. It is in progress. But in the resolution in our packet, as well as the slightly amended one on the table, that only the wording was wrong or changed. But Condition K, a traffic study is being conducted for Canterbury Commons, and all recommended improvements apply to this final plat must be incorporated. And so that gave me pleasure that this isn't a TIF application. This is an application for a preliminary plat by the developer Dorn. Your questions, I think, are for a later date in regard to the TIF aspect, but this is for just the plat, and I wanted to make sure, too, that the traffic study and the impacts, whether it's internal or 83 or Eagle Creek, get incorporated into that.
And Mayor and Council, the other big thing here is you're also approving the PUD amendments, so unlike other projects that you approve that are in a typical zone, in a PUD, you're actually approving this project. So if there are significant changes as defined by the code, they have to come back to you.
And defined by acreage, defined by density.
Yes, sir.
Exactly. Counselor Luce?
Yeah, the parameters that were held within in the preliminary plat as we see it, we're pretty much stuck with, as Mr. Thompson said, when they go to final plat.
Mayor and council member, there is condition K that the mayor put in there that the applicant agreed to. So you have to remember, there's actually two applicants here. You have Dorn and you have Canterbury Development, because they're working hand in hand here. So the agreement between them is the line on one side is fixed so that Dorn knows where their property is going to be. If necessary, based on the traffic study, Canterbury would have to give up additional land on their side.
Yeah, could have saved you a little conversation there. I'm okay with what I see. I'm just, the roads that are gonna be put in later, I just wanna make sure we're not locked into anything there. And from my
Mayor and
understanding,
council,
we're not.
correct. Yeah, the only road that you're approving tonight is the road you see in front of you.
Okay.
That's the Shenandoah.
Mayor and council members, if I may, as far as the traffic study goes, it's not like we don't have a traffic study already. We completed, the city and working with the developer, completed a phase 1-2 Doran traffic impact study about a half a year ago. So we know what the traffic impacts from this development will be. We expanded the Canterbury Commons traffic study to include the expanded scope of the Canterbury development. So I'm pretty confident that the Shenandoah portion of the Canterbury Commons project is pretty reflective of what will be needed that will be shown in that ultimate traffic study. So we do have the impacts from this study, and I think that we are pretty complete in what we're showing for this segment of the project with minimal changes that could come about from that ultimate traffic study.
Thank you. Counselor Luce?
Yeah, I think if you have partial traffic study, it would have been beneficial to all of us sitting here to at least get a view of those, and, you know, that would give us a heads up, more information.
And Mayor and Council, you did get that traffic study as part of the EAW, I think 6 or 7 months ago. It was included in there. So that Mr. Lilhog's referring, that actually just looked at the piece you're platting tonight and looked at the Dorn project and a potential additional residential and some commercial. So that was all calculated into the road and to the impacts in the area, which were pretty minimal.
Okay. Counselor Luce?
Just so that comment,
Turn the little white down.
just to clear that up, that comment that I made was not in scolding or anything like that. Anytime there's information that we can use that's available, I would like to see it, and I think many of us here would, you know, the sooner we get it, the better off we are, and we can make better decisions.
And Mayor and Council, as soon as we get the draft traffic study and Mr. Lilhog has signed off on it, we'll be happy to provide it to the administrator to provide it to you.
All right. Other questions of staff? Other questions of staff? Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, under G and H, it talks about letter of credit and securities and applicable fees and charges and stuff. Are any of these refunded back out of TIF?
Mayor and Council,
Or has that not been determined yet?
That has not been done yet. Typically, those are, so if Canterbury is going to build this road, typically to ensure that it gets done, there's a certificate insurance of completion that they would provide the city. We'd require that, whether it's TIF or otherwise. But we have, when you get a building permit, there are fees required for certificate of occupancy that do get refunded, have nothing to do. The TIF is strictly for the public infrastructure. So a lot of the fees you see on there are for sewer, water connections into the actual development, which they don't get back because they have to pay all of that. So a typical unit here, rough estimate, including the park dedication fees, is probably $12,000 or $13,000 they have to pay up front that they don't get back, and it's not out of TIF.
Other questions of staff? Other questions of Councilor Whiting?
Thank you. We looked at this before, and it talked about some of the townhomes situation to the north of that. And it looks like the change that you've made here is moving this project farther north. Are those townhome proposals still coming forward later on the south side of this project?
Mayor and Council, we will see. The reason why they moved the project forward is it's being built in 2 phases, and when they did the geotechnical study, there was rock under one side and they needed fill in the other, so it made sense to slide their project up because it's a much larger project. If they're allowed, based on your last change to the comprehensive plan and the zoning, up to 10% of the site can be residential. They're not using that much of it here in the first phase. They will look, based on market demands, where else residential fits in this project. But the developer has agreements with the Doran Company not to build competing projects while they're under construction.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of staff? If not, thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward and make comment in regard to their application?
Hello, Mayor and City Council members. We have no further comment from the video or anything.
That's fine. Councilor Luce?
Well, I, for one, from the beginning, I wouldn't say fallen in love with the project, but I think it's a project that's going to further our city quite a bit with the advancement in housing. The parking at the level that you reside on is a fantastic sales idea. I mean, how much nicer can you have it? I mean, indoor parking underneath, you got to get in an elevator. Here, you walk down the hall and you go to your unit. Golf seems to be a big thing in this development. You know, they've got the putting green outside, but I'm sure they're going to have the simulator inside, which they've had at every one I looked at. You know, and the architecture, it emulates Canterbury's architecture very nicely. I think it'll fit, you know, fantastically together. The 610 project that I looked at while under construction, they overbuild, and I can see where there's going to be no noise problem at this building. You know, you could have a rock concert and they probably won't know it inside the building. So, you know, the security guards, I'm guessing that's going to be similar to Bear Path, where they're 24/7, and you know, I've worked up in Bear Path. You don't get in or out without a couple days' notice. You know, that's it's cut and dried. It's not going to happen. And the roundabout that's planned there in the front of the building, or at the entrance, if we could get some maintenance numbers like I requested for the other one up on Beerling, you know, what the plantings will save us versus, you know, having people to have to weed it and everything else would be really nice to see, because, you know, if it is in the tax increment financing money, it would be nice to see that, you know, once we pay it now, maybe we're not going to have to pay it in maintenance year after year after year. So, all right, that's it.
Did you want to make a motion?
I'm tired of talking.
Councilor Whiting.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number R 2018-50 that amends the PUD for Phase 1 of the Doran development and approves the preliminary plat in Canterbury Park 7th edition.
Councilor Mokel?
I'll second.
Okay, and we're using the slightly, with this name change on the modified resolution on the table tonight, right?
Right.
Is that acceptable, a second?
Yes.
Just want to make sure. Further discussion? 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 All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 4
Lack
to
of
1.
information.
Huh?
I just feel like there's a lack of information.
For the plot and the
Yeah.
PUD amendment?
I'd like to
Okay.
see everything in totality.
Right. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item 8A6, which is a resolution for BHS regarding to high-density residential. Michael, welcome back.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. One of the reasons why you're seeing a lot of these re-guiding, rezonings is the Met Council has a drop-dead deadline of July 1st for accepting any amendments to the 2030 comp plan, and then there's basically a 9-month to a year holding period while the 2040 comp plans are adopted. So they have been pretty explicit they will not accept any re-guiding past like next week, because it still requires a 60-day oversight from the surrounding jurisdictions, and then they have the right to review it. So that's why you're seeing so many of these on the agenda tonight. So this is a kind of unusual project for Shakopee. This is a proposal from BHS for this parcel that was down here. In the West End plan, it was this parcel right here. The big interesting change, if you look at the original West End study area, only for the D.R. Horton land, which is called Windermere, all the different divisions of Windermere, the preferred development plan from June of 2016 showed 968 units, including BHS and Common Bond, which is also on the agenda tonight. They'll be at 685 units of actual housing, including those two. So it is less than they had originally planned. And one of the reasons why is they've been giving up a lot of land for right-of-way for the new county road that's going through. They gave up a lot of land for trails and also a lot of potential parkland. So it's kind of squeezed down their area, and there's also some commercial land now along Marystown Road. So when you add all that in, the actual density has decreased significantly.
By a third.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So this is the site we're actually talking about. This is the main intersection at Marystown and 17. This is the proposed site for the BHS project. These are kind of pictures of what it looks like today. BHS is proposing an unusual project. We don't have currently today anything besides R4 in the code where this falls into. It really is not what we would consider high-density residential. It's more a institutional use, but unfortunately the current code calls them apartments. We'll be bringing to the Planning Commission in May a new PUD ordinance that will allow these to actually be their own PUDs, so you don't have to use the R4, but that's what we're dealt with today. So this is a kind of a 3-phase use in here. So the first phase is independent living. So the second phase is assisted living, and the third phase is memory care. So people can live in this community as they get older. They typically enter these communities in their early 80s. This sound like any other apartment building actually has kind of a town center, and that's where they have full-on meals served, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You usually can pick a couple of those. They have supportive services like rehabilitation, workout rooms, a movie theater, grab-and-go food for if you're a resident there and you don't want to cook, you can pick up your food and take it back to your room. They have social functions. And then again, as I said, they have the assisted living and memory care here, so you can basically age in place and not have to leave the complex. This is affiliated with St. Gertrude's on the St. Francis campus, so if you were to get injured here, there is the potential for you to go over there for actual medical rehab and then move back home. So it's really unusual for one of these projects. Typically, they don't have that kind of facility nearby. So this is kind of how it lays out. Underground parking for the residents. It's interesting, the traffic study letter, which we included, this would probably generate the same or less trips than the 93 townhomes that were proposed for here, because typically people like to keep their car kind of as a sign of their independence, but you'll find because they provide bus service to the doctors, bus service to Hy-Vee for grocery shopping, bus service to other uses, people tend not to drive very much. So the cars just become symbol for them that they have some mobility, but they really don't use it very much. This is the total build out for their site plan. So these would be a newer product that they've been working on. They're kind of brownstone, so it's a little larger independent living. So you basically start out here, move into the smaller independent living, and then as you age, you end up in assisted living or the memory care. So it is a full life cycle of housing. Again, here's the floor plan layout long-term of what this would look like completely built out. Parking, so that brownstones also would have parking underneath. So this is, they're at the very early stage, and we'll show you some pictures of some of their other projects, but this is a 3D model of kind of the scale of what this would look like at build-out. This is St. Therese of Woodbury. This is a finished project, similar size and scope. Here's the actual layout of that project. And again, this is not your typical apartment building. It has a full dining service, catering kitchens. This has a chapel. And this is the homestead at Anoka Phase 2. And then this is the Apple Valley project. This is probably the preeminent site in this development. You can see it sits right at the end of the lake. It's surrounded by single-family homes. And they find a lot of people that live in these single-family areas, their parents are people that are moving into this so they can be close to their families and grandchildren and kind of enjoy the amenities in the area. This is the movie theater at the Apple Valley facility. So if you look at senior living facilities in Shakopee, these are kind of the densities because they're not your typical apartments. They are typically much smaller units. Women tend to live longer than men, so you see a lot more single women in them. But Northridge Court all the way down to River City Center, we have some high. 200 Levy Drive is 86 dwelling units. All Saints is 26 dwelling units. This would be at 22.92 as proposed at full build-out. So they're looking tonight for a re-guide to high-density residential, rezone to R4. You would see a PUD amendment for the specific use and development at a later date, along with their preliminary plat. This is also a site that Spuck's going to take a little piece out of for their booster station that's necessary to do the next phase of Canterbury and also build this project. So that's why you'll see a preliminary plat, because we'll need to pull that little piece for Spuck out of this current parcel.
Questions of staff? Councilor Lehman?
We're talking about the third phase, and I'm not finding a third phase anywhere in the information that I have.
So hold on.
It's all phase
the
1,
brownstone?
phase
So if you look at the different colors here, the last phase would be these brownstones along the water here, along this pond.
2. Okay.
So it's this piece right here.
It says phase 2 on mine.
Well, we'll let the applicant address exactly which the phases are.
See, it says phase 2 right there.
That's supposed
Yeah,
to be
you're right, it does.
phase 2.
Good evening,
Welcome.
Mayor and Council. I'm Steve Coons with Essential Decisions, Inc. We're developers working with Benedictine Health System on this project. And we are proposing 2 phases of building. I think what Mr. Kursky referred to as his 3 phases were really just levels of care within the community. So independent living, assisted living, and memory care. So we are proposing a first phase, which I'm going to go back a couple slides if I can, which would consist of 179 units with independent living at the top. That would be a 4-story building. The town center being a 2-story building, and then the assisted living and memory care buildings being 3 stories with memory care on the first floor and assisted living on floors 2 and 3. So those were the 3 phases he was referring to. We refer to this as a mini continuum. A full continuum, you would include a care center. And in essence, Benedictine Health System, owning St. Gertrude's, has the full continuum with this. Just 2 miles down the road, this would be an extension of that campus. So within that, I just wanted to point out a few highlights as well. We have walking trails around the building. It's something seniors really want to have within that. We're hoping to be able to connect to any trails with the parks that D.R. Horton puts in there. The underground parking will be at least a 1-to-1 ratio on the independent living. And as time goes on, it's generally full right away, but maybe utilized less 10 years down the road. And with the brownstones, generally, with the second phase, and I'll The second phase, when we add the brownstone units, which are more 12 to 1,400 square feet, more of a townhome type unit. It's generally about 1.5 to 1 parking spaces underground. A little, maybe 5 years younger senior, a little more mobile, doesn't want, not necessarily want to be in the big building, but close to the services with that. And along with that, in the second phase, some additional assisted living units. A couple things I want to emphasize. We're not asking for any city or county financial support. This is a fully taxed project. We're projecting it could be anywhere, $350,000 in real estate taxes on the first phase, as well as park dedication fees being paid $400,000 or so on the first phase, with another $250 on the second phase. As the traffic study showed, there's little to no impact to the traffic counts. No crime in these buildings, so there should not be a significant number of police calls. You will obviously, with seniors, have the ambulance calls as they would in living in the community. We've identified a strong market need and demand for this project, so we really feel it will be successful. We're projecting also that it will generate 40 full-time equivalents in jobs on the first phase. Maintenance, housekeeping, dietary, and nursing staff, and administration. Our timeline, we're in front of you now really because of the Met Council deadline. We'll be coming forward with a PUD amendment and later this summer if this is approved this evening. And then our goal would be to finance and start construction later this year. Our construction period is generally about 14 to 16 months. So if all goes as planned, we'd be opening spring of 2020. I also have Andy Opsahl with me tonight. He's a vice president with Benedictine Health System, and he wants to talk a little bit about their company.
Sure. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'm from BHS, obviously. We're affiliated with the St. Gertrude's Care Center here. Started our affiliation with St. Gertrude's and the Shakopee community over 20 years ago. 2000, we reinvested, added to the care at St. Gertrude's. In 2004, we did that again. 2012, we added more. So we've added a number of phases of skilled nursing and assisted living to that site. As you might know, we're currently landlocked on that site. We view what we're trying to accomplish here as the best option for seniors in the future. The full continuum of care, this would provide long-term full continuum of care for seniors, starting from independent living, having memory care, assisted living, and even nursing home options. It would function with the St. Gertrude's campus, and instead of responding to health events, serious health events, which is what happens with post-acute care, with long-term care, this allows an option for your area seniors to prevent those options in many cases. Simple medication management, simple food, eating and nutrition can prevent a lot of those instances. So we're excited. We hope to continue to work with Shakopee. Have a great love for this community, great love for the people at St. Gertrude's. Super proud of what they've done. They've, if you haven't heard, they've achieved national recognition for quality of care. One of our most cherished sites in the Benedictine Health System. So we certainly hope to help them grow and help to contribute to the health of area seniors. So.
All right, thank you. Other, yep, continue.
We have Mike Sewell from D.R. Horton.
Welcome.
Good evening. Here for many reasons, but regarding BHS, Michael touched on the density, but I just wanted to give you an update from D.R. Horton Spectrum. I remember the day when someone walked into my office and said, what do you think about trying to put in another denser product in Shakopee? And I just told them, go away. We're not going to do it. We've been through many renditions with you folks before on the West End study, so I wasn't all for the idea, but they said it was BHS. They're connected to St. Gertrude's. So I thought, okay, let's at least explore it. And then we met with EDI and we saw the quality of buildings they did. We listened to your Envision Shakopee presentation you did here. We learned that you guys are finding that there's a need for senior care facilities in here, so we thought it was a good idea. Horton's certainly committed to this area, as you can see with our next, excuse me, our next presentation on the land of the south. We certainly can build 93 more townhomes. I have concerns that it's going to take us a longer period of time to build them. It's going to keep the prices down on your existing townhomes in town because I just think it's going to be an overabundance. It's going to take us a while to work through. Our townhomes will be about $27 million worth of tax base, and I think, if I'm correct, they're about 30 million at build out, so I thought that was a positive. And then I also, no kids, just listen to the school district tell us that we're going to work on our budget in the school district, so I thought it was all a positive. So that's what made us at Horton think it was a good idea. It's an attractive building for the site. I do have just a breakdown of what Michael told you earlier about the density. Maybe I sent it late to him, so it didn't get you guys, but maybe just give him so you understand what my numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got two.
So as you can see on the map here, there's an outline of blue, and that kind of gives you an idea of what Horton either owns or has under contract. And of that area, as Michael pointed out, we planned 685, and that 685 includes some units outside of the area we control. It's just that the west end study didn't follow property lines, so I had to include some ghost platting, some stuff we've done on some parcels next door just for the areas matched. And underneath your west end study, we could have up to 968. So as Michael says, the parkland, the right-of-way, everything has been squeezing density out of here. So I know it looks like a lot, but when you look at the big picture, it's only 6 units per acre out there. So I think it fits within your guidelines of what you've been trying to do.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions of the applicant? Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I have 2 questions for the BHS folks. And my first question is, in your market study for the need of the area and what you're proposing, what type of life expectancy and for the size? And I don't know if you understand what I'm asking. So let's hypothetically say this whole thing is built. How long will that serve this area until we need more capacity?
That's a question I guess I can't answer. I guess the market study is what they look at. They'll look at the demographics, the age, and also income qualified people, 75 and older, 85 and older. And those demographics show that also a 5-year look, 2017 and 2022 projected. And those show demand, enough demand, substantial demand for this product. The census data and the projections don't necessarily go out past 2022, but what we hear, the aging of the population, we know there's going to be greater demand.
Okay, and then a second question, if I can, Mayor. The price point for somebody that's looking at this option, would you say it's above, below, or average for the market?
So it's deemed market rate. So being BHS is a nonprofit, they need to meet certain financial guidelines with their financing, but that's what the rents will help substantiate. They will be at market rate. They're not, I would say, a middle to a little bit higher than that rental level, in the $2.75 a square foot rate.
Well, I'm not in the market, so I don't know if that's a good rate or not.
Are you looking to be in the market?
It's the typical rate of newly constructed senior living buildings.
Okay. So
rental only.
So it's average to
Yes.
others?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
More questions? of the applicant. Counselor Luce?
I just have some comments. I visited a couple of their sites, one in Hastings and one in St. Peter. The one in St. Peter is the newer of the two considerably, is built in '04 or '06, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, a couple different phases there.
Yeah, and very nice project, well kept. I looked from the basement to the attic. I mean, I had access to everything. So very nice. I did meet one of the staff from the hospital that does your physical therapy that I recognize, and it makes me feel good that we've got that same people, going to the different places. That it works out very well. The Hastings project, I believe you bought that in 2010, if I'm not mistaken.
We were asked to buy that when Alina started working with that hospital, and that was even later than that. It was 14, I think.
Okay, but that whole that development there was built in 1965.
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 phases, and one phase was quite old.
And just so you know, they still have equipment that's operating from 1965, so they do a fantastic job of maintenance.
We have good people. We have really good people.
Yeah, they do. And other than the architecture, the place is, you couldn't tell it's that old. I mean, it's just by the way the features are, you can tell, like the chapel being round and red brick, it kind of dates it a little bit. But, the one in St. Peter, when we were in the parking garage, there was a car there, like Mr. Kursky was saying, that they don't use their cars very often. You couldn't use this car. It was so dusty. It was covered. It had to be there for 6 months without moving. So, whoever owned it, they probably liked the idea of it's there if I need it, but they're not going to use it. And all the people that I met at your facilities were very open, very nice to deal with. Your maintenance person down in St. Peter, younger fellow that really knows his business. I mean, I think I mentioned to you that it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to consult him a little bit in the development of this one. He had some very good ideas that, were missed. I was looking at some of the numbers that have come across our desks. By 2030, I believe we're expected to increase by 7,000 housing units. We've got 22% of that in the pipeline almost already. There's, with these that we're looking at tonight, there's over 1,500 that are going to be under construction here shortly if everything is approved. That does concern me a little bit. We went through this in '08 where we couldn't keep up with all the projects, and I don't know if our inspection staff is going to be able to handle it without adding people, because they're going to be running their tails off. And like Mr. Sewell stated, the positive aspects, there's a lot of them. You're going to have less traffic because it's seniors. You're going to have basically no children in school. It's not going to affect the school's numbers, but yet they're going to be paying taxes. So this could be an offset to the Dorn project. Dorn's going to add a couple of students, not many, but they're going to be a TIF district. The park dead fees, there's going to be no impact from this group of consumers on our park site that I can see. I mean, very little. If there is, I would give you a little hint on something that would be very good for them to know about, would be our inclusive playground just on the other side of Hy-Vee, because it's built for seniors, vets with disabilities, people with disabilities, children that are special needs. It fits the gamut that, they could get some exercise there and not have to worry when they fall down, because it's a 10,000 square foot rubber mat. So it has a lot of great aspects to it, and I think your people would find it pretty neat, especially if they're mobility impaired and they want to visit with their grandchildren and, take them to a playground. They can take them to that one and be right next to them. The fact less density than the townhouses is a great thing in my book. I like that fact. I guess I'm running out of notes here. So I like it. It just concerns me that we have such a vast number. I mean, 1,500, that's a lot of housing units to be going in at one time. So,
Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, I'd actually like this project, to be honest with you. And I would encourage staff to work on the institutional land use, because that makes sense. And we have seen that in the past. A lot of our schools are institutional, courthouse. I'll offer resolution R 218-045 to re-guide the property to a higher density.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second on the table. Further discussion. I look at the amount of numbers, but I also look at the diversity of housing options. BHS is one of the premier senior facility operators, I believe, in the state of Minnesota, as far as I know. My mom was in their facility for 4 years up in Duluth, Minnesota, and top of the line, do very well. And I think this is going to benefit our community. We have other senior places, but to have that independent living and the assisted living, the memory care, all in one stop, real benefit to our community. Councilor Whiting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, we've all talked about the silver tsunami and the baby boomers retiring and this life cycle housing conversation we've been having. We need these in our community so we can keep our parents. I think one of the gentlemen talked about that. So we can visit our grandparents and our parents and have them close to us so they can participate in our functions at home, but still have a safe place to live. So I'm excited about this project and hope it gets moving ahead quickly.
Councilor Mokel?
And I agree with that, because, 10 years ago when this affected us, there was nowhere in Shakopee to put my father-in-law. So this will be sorely needed in this community.
Councilor Luce?
In my talks with the different groups and people from their facilities, one thing that really struck me was, being a nonprofit, they have it set up that if you're there for any length of time, I may be quoting wrong, but you can correct me, but if you run out of money or the ability to stay there, they have assistance for that. So that's a great thing. I mean, you don't uproot someone at the final stage of their life and throw them into unfamiliar surroundings.
I think the state takes over, but they can't move you because you can't afford to pay. The state kicks in.
I believe
That's what happened with my mother.
Yeah, but I believe their facility, they don't have to go to the state.
Yep.
Mayor, I'd prefer not to get into the operational discussions of somebody else's business.
No, that's fine. That's
But I am also concerned about the amount of development that we're approving. I happened to be here in the period of when we were leading the nation and watched a very good staff all admit that that's how mistakes are made. You're trying to do too much too fast, and mistakes just are made. You didn't foresee something or whatever, and I see the same thing happening again, and it's unfortunate to live the same mistake twice. It's, what do you do? I mean, you make hay when the sun is shining, I guess, and store it up in the barn for when it's not growing,
Councilor Luce?
Well, one nice thing is, we know there's not gonna be any more R4s coming forward for at least 9 months to a year, because there's a moratorium by Met Council, so that part's over with.
So, motion on the table, second, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. That was for the re-guide. Now we have a motion to rezone. Councilor Whiting?
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 02018-007 to rezone property at Windermere to R4 zone, high-density residential.
Second,
I have a motion and a second, discussion.
formerly known as industrial in the future.
Motion on the table, second, further discussion. Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Meant institution.
Motion passes. Counselor Luce?
Can we get a 10?
Second.
Oh, it's gonna be on.
Make a motion for recess. I made a second.
Okay. We're gonna stand, motion for 10-minute recess, 5-minute recess. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand in recess. will reconvene the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for April 17th, 2018. We are moving forward to 8AA, resolution for re-guiding PUD and preliminary plat for common bond. Michael, welcome.
Mayor and council, this is for a project called The Willows. If you remember the original preliminary plat that D.R. Horton had, this was the site of a potential 100-unit development. So this is taking that same site, shown here in the West End study area. And so now you would have two R4 pieces kind of as the entrance to this area. This is the preliminary plat. There will, when we get through this, there will end up being an out parcel here that will be a commercial parcel.
Could you go back? Where was that spot?
Oops, hold on. So this is the current parcel today.
Yep.
If you remember, there's a daycare going up one more parcel up here. There's a vacant parcel here, and then
Can't see the pointer on our screens, but.
There we
about
go.
over here. Now can you see
Okay.
it?
No,
So you'll see in a second, the common bond piece is going to cut across here, and there'll be left a commercial parcel here. So the whole idea was that you would have a small multifamily project on the corner and then commercial. They have received preliminary approval for a final plat for a daycare center that's just up from this.
perfect.
So this is the preliminary plat. This would be block 1 right here on the corner. This is a 60-unit development. So this will also be a PUD amendment. You'll see in a second the floor plans. There is some grade to this site. We did talk to the developer about connecting the two sites, but we can't do that. So residents would have to come out and use the sidewalk to go to the commercial areas. There would not be a connection between the two properties because of grade. This is their landscape plan. This does meet our new landscape standard that you all approved. It was just published. So this shows kind of how that would work. And this is their layout. It's a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. 3 floors. There's no parking underneath. Parking is just a surface lot. The little unusual thing is there's a lot more masonry in this project. You'll hear in a minute from Common Bond, but they're not your typical residential developer. They're a long-term holder. They build these, they manage these, they also provide additional services on site for their residents, and they've been pretty successful. This is not considered by most to be long-term affordable housing. This is more kind of a fill piece. The people that typically live here move on. They will have a short PowerPoint that will talk about how, give an example of someone who's moved on to home ownership. So they provide a lot of supportive services unlike most apartment developments. This facility will have a meeting room and also facilities for after school, for tutoring and mentoring, and they also provide support to people. So if you're working at Hy-Vee as a cashier and you aspire to be working in the meat department, how do they get you training so you can become someone who works in the meat department or another type of job? So they're a little bit unusual in that they actually try to get people to move on in their careers. And this is a rendering of what the project look like. Again, I said there's a lot of brick in this property. They are a long-term holder. I think they've sold one project in their entire existence. They went out of the senior business. The last group were just in and sold that property, and now they're strictly in the multifamily business. So tonight you're looking to re-guide the high-density residential, rezone to R4, amend the PUD for this specific use and this development. It's 18.46 dwelling units an acre, and they have their preliminary plat. That's it.
Questions of staff? Questions of staff? And this is down, the amount of units, 60 units, is down from the previous concept of 100?
Mayor and council, I believe, and Mr. Sewell is here, I think their original plan was 110 or 120 units. This, again, would be paying full park dedication. One of the things you've seen tonight is we've been taking these projects to the Park and Rec Advisory Board, and in the past, the money just kind of went into the till. They have actually been requesting, and you'll see in the resolutions, the money is getting dedicated back into these projects to ensure long-term that the parks can get built out and used by the residents that are paying into it. So That was kind of a change in policy on the part of the board, and they've been very supportive.
Area.
Stays in the area. So, as you saw in the last project, they'd be using the playground, but also access to the trails for families or whatever. And this same was true with this. They will have some facilities on their property, but their money would go in to pay for other additional improvements. There's a park plan just up the street from this.
Other questions of staff? If not, would the applicant like to come forward and make comments on their application? Welcome. Thank you for being patient.
I can attest to her patience. She was with me on both of my tours, so.
It was a pleasure. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Kayla Shuckman with Common Bond Communities. I'm a project manager on the real estate team, and I also have Cecile Bedore, our executive vice president of real estate, and Jess Minton on our property management side, regional manager with Common Bond. So I just wanted to share a couple of slides to give a little bit of background on who Common Bond is and what we're proposing. So Common Bond was established in 1971 out of the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minneapolis. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we own and manage over 6,500 units in 55 cities across Minnesota as well as Wisconsin and Iowa. And the majority of our portfolio is in rural and suburban areas. So when Common Bond first started out in the 1970s developing housing, the folks involved at that time quickly learned that the families that we were serving would have better outcomes if we could help them address other needs in their lives in addition to housing, getting that job training to move up in the trades, getting kids to have better outcomes at school, helping aging adults be healthy and get folks connected in their communities so they're not socially isolated. So our model is a little different than other housing developers. We not only develop the housing, but we also focus on really trying to engage our residents and giving them the tools that they need to improve their lives. So our services range from after-school tutoring, employment coaching, as well as kind of the health and wellness classes for the seniors in our properties, depending on the needs of who ends up living in our communities. We also have our own property management company, and we manage all of our properties, and we also do property management for other developers. So because we're a long-term owner and we manage all of our properties, when we develop a property, as Mr. Kursky mentioned, we are committing to be a long-term community partner, and we've gained really a strong reputation for doing this. We have communities nearby in Excelsior, Minnetonka, Edina, Apple Valley. So we have really worked hard to be long-term community partners wherever we've invested. We have a wide variety of residents in our properties, families with children, older adults, we have veterans, people with disabilities, recent college grads. We really envision this property serving folks who might work at Hy-Vee, really some of the employees that would work at the New Benedictine Health Service, and nursing assistants, teachers, teaching assistants, and even some of the police officers that serve the community. So this is really people that would be from the community. Our experience when we develop a property is that the folks who move in are from the community, and it's people that might be neighbors, friends. We have residents pictured here, and I wanted to just share a story of one of our families. Adam and Rose are two former Common Bond residents. They both were employed in 2016 when they moved into our property and began working with one of our employment coaches. But they were looking to advance their career. They worked hard. They had an employment coach that helped them secure full-time positions that offered benefits. Adam got a position first, and then Rose actually went on and got her CNA certificate. And once they had that position, they were actually able to move out of our community, which we consider a success, and purchase their own home in 2017. So that's the type of story we're really proud of at Common Bond, and it's just really one example of how we give residents the tools to improve their lives and really improve communities that we serve. So we really do focus on health, education, and employment in our communities in addition to the housing. We've had some really strong outcomes in this arena that we've been proud of. In the previous program year, we had participants with our employment coaches actually see an average increase in monthly income of $1,000 a month, which we're really, really excited to see. And for high school seniors participating in our tutoring programs, we actually had a 100% graduation rate, which was also something that we were really proud of. So Common Bond first started exploring opportunities in Scott County and Shakopee as stakeholders in the area and in the state kept mentioning the community as really having a strong workforce housing need. So we started exploring this probably about a year ago and having conversations with community members, and at the county level through SCALES, Live, Learn, Earn initiative have really heard the need there. We heard this need echoed by the Chamber of Commerce. We went out and talked to them. And through the Envision Shakopee comp plan process, the communities expressed that people that call Shakopee home are finding that housing prices are becoming a stretch for some. So our proposal will address some small part of this need. The site for our development is right at the corner there of Marystown and 17th, 3¼ acres. And we're really excited about this location with the pedestrian amenities, the development that's happening around it. And it's consistent with the West End land use plan, though as several folks have mentioned, the overall density is quite a bit lower than originally called for. Our proposal will have 60 apartments with rents just below market for the majority of our units. Significantly fewer units than you could probably fit on the site. We're looking at 60 versus the 100 that was originally proposed, and density per acre quite a bit lower as well. We will have a community room, a playground on site, a computer lab for students to use, secured access entry, laundry. It will look just like market rate housing, and as Mr. Kursky mentioned, we really plan and manage our developments for the long term. So when we choose materials, we're looking for durability. We're looking for something that will operate and really be a good neighbor for the community for the next 30 years and beyond. And because we have property management staff in-house, it's really important to us that the project that we design on the front end also works for Jess when he's got property management folks that need to operate that property. So I think with that, I will stop and happy to take any questions, as well as Jess on the property management side, if that would be helpful.
Councilor Whiting, did you have a question?
Thank you. No, I'm excited about this project. One question I have, you've mentioned it as affordable housing, which it is. A lot of people have questions about what affordable housing is. I see affordable housing as there's a component that's Section 8 housing, which is people below, I think it's 30% of the median income. And then there's workforce housing between 30 and 60, I think, if I'm remembering my numbers correctly. How would you categorize this project?
Sure, that's a good question. So the majority of our units will, unfortunately not be extremely affordable. We will have rents probably in the range of $800 to $1,100. For a family of four, the income would be around $54,000. So it's, the majority of people that live in our properties work.
Okay. Other questions?
I have comments, but I'll wait for everybody else's questions.
Do you have more of your presentation or no?
No.
Okay. I'm very familiar with Common Bond, especially around the metro area. They do a good job. There is certainly a need in our community, as we've heard from our community, as well as the Envision comp plan update. The density being at 18, to me, the location and the need, really this is on the, it is bigger than R3, but it's certainly lower than we've seen. But I think the need to have the diversity of this style of housing and the inclusion is important for our community. Councilor Lehman?
In general, I see that the housing affordability is actually, or unaffordability, I should say, is for the most part caused by government, all levels of government combined. You've got the city, the county, the Met Council, the state, the school, all every year raise the taxation on people, take more of their hard-earned money from them, and make their mortgage payments or their rents in their apartments more expensive. Because of rental properties, apartment buildings, they take that increase in property taxes from whichever level of government it may be, and they put it into the rent and raise the rent up, where people's wages don't go up as equal to the taxation. So what we really have, in my opinion, is we have a housing affordability created by the government, and the solution is to take taxpayer money from those that you've already hurt by making their house unaffordable as a solution. And in this case, it's a very small solution. I would prefer we see 5 layers of government reduce the cost to 15,000 houses in Shakopee and apartments so that you're not needed. That would be the bold action I'd like to take.
You got a proposal?
Absolutely. Let's put a group together to work with the county and Met Council and everybody else and say, all of you preach affordable housing and all of you make it unaffordable. Let's start working at making it affordable instead of jacking up fees and regulations and taxes and everything else. I mean, putting an energy tax on people's gas bill, did that help the household income? No. It's all these pieces together that cause this problem, and taking more money from people that don't utilize your services it's a good business model because it makes your need greater in the future if we continue down this path.
Common Bond is making it work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know what's exciting about this project is that there's a daycare facility going right next door. There's a park going to be up the road. Jackson Elementary is, less than a half a mile away. The high school is probably within that range too. I love the idea that they have tutoring, and they mentioned 100% of the kids that take advantage of that are graduating. And the life kind of mentoring skills or coaching kind of aspect of what they offer helps people move forward, helps them be able to, not only keep a job in our community, but move on and buy a house in our community eventually. So this is something we've been talking about, at scale, and we've talked about it here. This type of housing is needed. I'm excited to help it move forward.
Okay, Councilor Lewis.
Yeah, I like the fact that they're not asking for any gimmies. They're gonna do their own thing. The support services, that's all in-house support. They have offices right there. The people don't have to travel. You know, I saw that in both the places that I went and visited. That's a very great benefit to the residents. Like you said, the school kids can get tutoring and they all graduate. I mean, that's, in now, today's day and age, that doesn't always happen. Right. You know, and the people that are looking for a better job, I mean, like you said, you mentor them to help themselves, you know, and that's what it takes. They need to help themselves, but they need someone to coach them on how to do it, not just, you know, demand that they do it. I believe this would have met our old PUD numbers, or very close, on an R3, but, you know, that's beside the point, but that would have, you know, years back, it would have met it, so.
Mayor and council, yeah, the old R3 was 18 units an acre.
Right, 18 point something. Council Mokel, and then I'll come back.
I would like to thank Common Bond for coming here. I think the idea that the diocese, thought of this concept, and it was about helping people and continuing to help people. That's why it was created. And I appreciate that you looked at Shakopee and heard from all of the many partners that we've had that we are definitely in need here, especially as we have more businesses coming and now a grocery store, and that everybody could benefit from this, or at least the people who serve it. And so with that, I will approve Resolution R 2018-044, approving a comprehensive plan amendment to change the land use from medium-density residential to high-density residential, a PUD amendment for a 60-unit affordable apartment complex and preliminary plat.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Whiting. Counselor Lehman?
Yeah, Mayor, correction, there was, Counselor Lewis said there was no assistance. It's actually getting tax credits through the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, or proposing to do so.
What I was referring to is they're not asking us for any. Not the city. The city itself is not.
No, but everybody pays state tax.
I understand that.
Okay.
I'm just looking at our taxpayers.
All right.
Personally. I did have a little extra here. I did go visit two of their facilities, one in Excelsior, one in Minnetonka. The one in Excelsior is a 40-year-old facility that, other than the architecture, you can't tell that it's 40 years old. It is very well kept. They have nice amenities. They have a garden area for those that want a garden. The Excelsior experience was kind of unique because when I came to the door where you have to be buzzed in, they have the gentleman they call the gatekeeper. He makes sure you're there for the right reasons. He's a resident. I believe he's retired, and he just keeps track of things. So it's kind of, they have ownership, which is pretty cool. And then I went over to the Minnetonka residence that looks a lot like the one I believe they're planning on building here. And it's a very nice, well-kept facility. They have a 24-hour turnaround on repairs that are needed in the apartments. That's unheard of. Most places it's a week. So they do a fantastic job.
Motion on the table and a second. Further discussion? Discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you. Let's move here to 8A8.
Eight.
A rezoning.
9.
9, Mayor.
9, excuse me. 8A9 for the rezoning of the same project. Counselor Whiting?
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 02018-006 to rezone property at Windermere to R4 high-density residential.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Council Mokel. Further discussion? Discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
Welcome to Shakopee.
Welcome to our community. All right. Next up, preliminary plat for Widmer South, 8A10. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you stated, this is an application for preliminary plat for a project that's identified as Windermere South. I made reference to this earlier tonight, but I'll go over it in a little bit more detail. Site in question is located west of Marystown Road, south of 17th Avenue. Just for reference purposes, project Common Bond is located here. The BHS site is here. Powers rezoning reguiding is here, and then the Friendship Church is here. So seeing a lot of activity in this part of the community tonight. This is a single-family residential development that's proposed, approximately 70 acres of land. Proposed 158 single-family residential structures. This is a plat image of the north half of the proposed project. You can see the predominant road, Windermere Way, continues from the existing Windermere addition that was approved in the past. You can see the continuance of that road down to 128th Street, which divides the two churches that are existing on west side of Marystown Road, including Friendship Church, which you saw earlier tonight. And then the south half of the project, you kind of pick up Windermere Way here, 128th Street, and eventually end up down at County State 8 Highway 78. Again, 158 single-family homes. Developer and city staff have met quite a bit to discuss this project. Have received comments from city engineering, from Shakopee Public Utilities, Scott County, and Parks. They are proposing, as we see on this screen here, is a pretty good network of trails and sidewalks, which was something that was stressed with that West End study, and just with any projects that the city is looking at going forward. I'd like to see some good connections in the community so people have ways to get to other areas in their neighborhood and in the community. Again, the south half, just again showing the trail and sidewalk networks that's proposed or recommended by city engineering staff. There is a park proposed in this project, kind of in this area, which this identifies a lot of trees. With the first addition, Windermere, there was some dedicated parkland just to the north, so this will tie into that that park area. And it's hard to kind of make out on this plan, but kind of where my pointer is, there would be a trail connection that would bring you up to the high point in this park. Beautiful views from this area. You can see all the way downtown. So I'm excited to see that park area develop and people take advantage and enjoy the views that they'd explore from that site. Again, the West End study plan kind of shows this area that we're looking at now is in this location, essentially from the south part of N down all the way to County State AI 78. It's a mix of single family, small lots. West End study kind of showed townhouses, as you saw previously. What's being proposed here is a little less dense than what had originally been shown in the West End study. And the project does comply with design standards of the R1B zone. They did receive variance for lot widths for some of the lots on the south end, and also for some setbacks, side yard setbacks. The Board of Adjustment and Appeals approved those variances in April 5th of 2018. But quite a few conditions included in the resolution, and the applicant is already working on making some of those conditions known or in revisions. They will be coming forward with final plat at some time should this application be approved. And as I mentioned earlier, there's no utilities at this area now, but I would foresee phasing of this development, starting from the north, working south, just as utilities are made available to extend to this area. So, are there any questions for staff?
Councilor Luce?
Yeah, Mr. Nobles, can you go ahead about 3 screens? Back up a little. Right there. The sidewalk that's crossed out in red, is that to be eliminated because it's duplication of the trail on the other side of the street?
Councilmember, which one? This one? Oops, let me see. Hold on. This one over here?
No,
The scribbled out one.
Down, go south. Right there.
Again, these were comments we received from city engineering and are included in their memos that they provided, but that looks like that is proposed for being eliminated. They would have a sidewalk on the west side of this section of road, so there would be a good connection through this neighborhood.
Yeah, just, that was my original question before I saw this slide, was it was duplicated on both sides, which
And
is,
Mayor and Council, Mr. Noble mentioned the variances that were granted. It's the lots highlighted in yellow here. We will be getting the long-awaited one-story townhouses that the community's been asking for. So basically, it's a
Level townhome?
single-family homes on a common lot where they do the snow plowing and maintenance, and it's really designed for people age in place. It's all one story, and they have an option if they want to put a basement or a second floor. But that's been a product that does not exist currently in Shakopee.
Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, I'm not sure who can answer this, but the bottom of the memo, last paragraph, it talks about the 7.5 yard side yard setbacks. This is less than the 5 and 5 in Old Shakopee. And my specific concern is the stormwater management in these side yard setbacks of 7.5 feet. So I didn't see anywhere in any of the conditions or comments in the resolution, and it might be covered under one of these conditions in the details that I'm not seeing. Maybe AA, conditions noted in the stormwater review memo, Kirby Templin, March 26, 2018, attached. How do I make sure that the stormwater between houses that are 7.5 feet apart from each other aren't going into each other's basements?
Mr. Mayor, I'll talk about that, and if I'm got something to be added, Mr. Sewell is here. The R1B has a standard 10-foot side yard setback. So what the variance was to allow a 7.5-foot side yard, or required a 7.5-foot side yard setback. So they got a variance of 2.5 feet. So between the structures, you're going to have 15 feet versus the 20. So point of clarification, it's not going to be just 5 feet between the structures. It'll be 15. And staff's been working with engineering on stormwater. There's been a significant discussion to make sure that the city will be able to handle stormwater. You know, if we need to get in there, we're going to have it in the location that we want. It's kind of a change in philosophy, but I think it's better, and it's going to be better for the community. So,
Is this a flat site? Is there some grade to it to where if it's laid out, it's going to flow away?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, there is a bit of grade out here, and that's been one of the talking points that city staff have had with developers, just to make sure that when services go in, that they're not too deep, because earlier on in some of the concepts to the north, we're starting to see sewer get pretty deep, and it just was a concern that should something break, you know, how do you take care of that? So engineering's been working to make sure that services are not going to be that deep for future maintenance purposes.
And Mayor and Council, it's harder to see because we've kind of changed policy. Mr. Lillehog had some good points he's been making on stormwater, but you'll see here, this used to be an out parcel. It's now actually in everyone's backyard. So we would have an easement over this for maintenance and cleaning it out, et cetera. But we ended up with these, the city engineers noticed all over the city, we had these weird outlots that nobody owns. Sometimes they go to tax forfeiture. And so the policies changed so that the property lines actually run through these, so that can't happen. But there's a very large basin back here to catch some of that stormwater that you were talking about. It's just, we should have colored these in blue, and we apologize, but it's a pretty large basin.
Counselor Whiting?
Thank you. This is two questions, separate from each other, but in one of the memos and discussion, it talks about that second elevation in the water tower. Has Spuck or anybody talked about where that might be? Or would that be in our park, or?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, excuse me. Yes, that's another talking point we've had with this developer, with Spuck, with some of the property owners in this area. As you can see on the slide, the West End study, we at one time it kind of looked at this area as potential water tower site. This is actually off their site on some adjacent property, so we've been talking to those property owners. Potentially even on this is Zumbro Avenue running north-south at this location. That's part of their plat. Also looking at potentially placing or locating that water tower to the west, which would be some higher ground and would be better, would be a better location for that. So the city developer, Spuck, have been talking quite a bit about the water tank location, water tower location, and it's something that is needed. I think referenced in the report that some point, because of the number of units, that we're going to need to have that constructed just to be able to provide service. So I think there'll be some conditions. Again, this is preliminary plat, but when they come in for final plat, Spuck's going to be looking at it carefully just to make sure we can provide the right services to those sites.
That's my concern, is that, do we need that water tower to be, or it'd be Spuck, but to be incorporated before this gets developed?
I think we're okay with this. Again, everybody's been pretty involved in it, and with the preliminary plat, everybody understands it's going to be needed. We don't think parcels in this preliminary plat are where that water tower will be sited, but it's coming up pretty quick, and certainly will be a factor when they come in with final plat application. So,
could you go back to your slide with the streets? Either the other one, if you could. Yeah,
Sure.
This one here. Just they have Street 4, Street 5, a few different ones. I always want to make sure that these are city streets and not private streets.
That is correct. They are city street. They are built to our design standards. They're not asking for reductions in widths or whatnot.
Thank you.
Councilor Luce?
The most feasible spot for that water tower, wouldn't that be on that high ground that's dedicated parkland at this point? And couldn't Spuck work with that idea as far as making the appearance presentable for, a park area?
Yeah.
The one over on Marshall Road, that looks pretty nice. I mean, that fits right in the area. I mean,
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, members of council, back to this West End study plan. I think when we were looking at this, and again with most recent discussions with Spuck, they think that that water tower is best to be sited in this location because it's a little further south and can, whereas if you had it further to the north, then it might not provide the best services that we need. So they're kind of looking out for the community just to make sure that what we build is being built with the right water pressure.
Maybe Mr. Sewell can jump in here, and I'm sure he's had discussions with the utility.
Just to add a little bit on the Spuck discussion, because I've had many conversations with Mr. Adams at Spuck. To Mr. Luce's point, the park area that we've dedicated in the past is about a 950. The area down there at 128th Street in Zumbro is like a 970 and 980, so it's actually 30, 40 feet taller or higher in elevation. So that's why Spuck would like to go there. We've actually had conversation with that landowner in Spuck just to start the process. Spuck has given us, they'll go up to 200 units on the booster station to start with. If the tower seems like it's coming, it's in the process because it takes some time to build it, they will start looking at, maybe they'll increase that number, but that's a decision the commission has to make on how much they run the pumps and such. They do remind everybody that they had the same issue or booster station by St. Francis before they built the tower out there, so they've had experience with it. So we all feel like it's doable, and it's going to put a governor on how fast we can build out there maybe, so it may help with some of your other concerns about how fast we can build, because water system's going to dictate how fast we go, and The booster station will take a year to build, and then they'll have to start the tower, which will take another 12.
No, to address that, my concern is that we don't put a house on that spot, that we, that we're thinking of where that needs to go in the future. And I know that Spuck has that under their control, but just some thoughts.
Other questions of the applicant? Other questions of the applicant? If not, Counselor Lehman?
For resolution R 2018-049, approving the preliminary plat of West Windermere South. Jeez.
I have a motion, Counselor and a second by Counselor Lewis. Further discussion? Discussion? Oh, Counselor Lewis?
Yeah, the only thing that concerns me here is, again, like I said previously, that, you know, the speed of development is cause for concern. I mean, I hope our staff can keep up with it and not be overworked, and like Councilor Lehman said, you know, in the past, during the 08 or before, things were missed, and, you know, hopefully we, you know, control it enough to, you know, if they need more time, just put the brakes on. So,
very good. Motion on the table, second. Further discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving ahead, 8A11, enter into a revolving forgivable loan. Michael, welcome.
Mayor and council, so, excuse me, this is, we were contacted by Deed looking for a shovel-ready project since we currently have had these funds for quite a long time. And so in just talking with our loan advisor at the state, at Deed, they had some pretty critical items they were looking for, and one of them was leveraging private investment, increasing the local tax base, and improving employment and economic opportunities and create a reasonable standard of living. So the only project that we currently have that's kind of shovel-ready on our side was the Doggy Doo project. And talking to them, they thought there's various ways that are allowed by the state to give them this funds. One was a capital line of credit. But working with our attorneys and with the state, they thought the best thing would actually to be fund equipment, because we can actually get a UCC filing against that equipment to ensure that they hold to the agreement. And actually the equipment, we would not remove that UCC filing until the 5-year time period is up. So we'd actually have some collateral against the loan. So the attorneys worked with Deed to come up with the documents. The other thing is they would have to meet the federal standard. This is old federal money that they're trying to either claw back or get used, is $13 an hour average over their employees. So they will be adding some new employees at their location. They will be increasing the wages of some of their current employees to meet that standard. And that was really the only concern that Deed expressed, that they've had some special needs employees, et cetera, that get a stipend. They need to make sure that their wage actually comes up to that $13 an hour average for their employees.
Questions of staff? Go ahead, Councilor Lehman.
First question is, well, it doesn't have a page number. On the promissory note, April 17th date, number 2, it says a loan shall be forgiven by the city if the borrower maintains the job and wage goals as provided in Section 5 of the loan agreement. 2 paragraphs down doesn't really say, so it must be in somewhere else here.
So,
Different document.
Different document?
Yeah, there's a promissory note and a loan agreement.
Okay, so what is the,
Paragraph 5 of the loan agreement.
what's the requirement, you know?
$13 an hour.
by state numbers.
And it's adjusted annually based on the federal wage and a multiplier. And so every year, as we do with all the other loans we've had, they have to submit certified payroll every year. And if they don't do that, we have to come back to you, and they get a 30-day cure. And if not, we can ask for repayment of that loan.
Second question, do we know what equipment is being considered for purchase?
Mayor and council, we've left that off because they didn't want to go out and get that list together, but we would not make this loan until their building gets built. And then they would have to provide us with the bills, bill of lading, et cetera, for the equipment, and then we would have the UCC filed against that equipment. So we will get a list of bona fide equipment and expenses before the loan's closed.
How many employees?
How many employees?
What do you have right now? I'm sorry, the applicant's here. So currently 13 employees, 2 others. When they move, they'll be substantially increasing because they're going to have a much larger facility. I mean, this is one of our, as the state called it, small business success stories. You have, they said it, if you mark on the list, it hits a lot of them because it's a woman-owned business, hire a lot of Shakopee people, and basically serves mostly Shakopee, a little bit of Chaska, and some in Chanhassen. So
But this is not our money, and if we didn't do something with it, Dee to take it back.
Mayor and council, so it's been very interesting to watch what's been happening. If you remember, in the past, you all have been making MIF loans. So the money comes through deed, comes to us, and then goes out. The legislature audited all the projects, and including ours, and found that some cities, it's not sure where all that money went. And so the legislature is about to pass regulations that the state will now be making the loans directly. The bad news, I think, from a city standpoint, is you all will not have any input into where that money goes. We've been able to leverage that for a lot of companies to keep them local, and now that kind of will be out of our hands. And right now they have certain pots they use in certain areas. Now that pot's going to be spread out throughout the entire state, and I think that's
Also,
going
we
to...
don't have to do the administration part of it as well, even though it was a state pass-through. So I know we had to crunch the numbers internally here before. Mr. Reynolds?
And as part of the current discussions at the legislature, if we do not use this in our community, when this, and it does look like the bill will pass, that this money will then leave our community, it will be clawed back, and we will not have the ability to use it in any way.
Okay. Other questions of staff? Counselor Luce?
I don't have a question of staff, but I just really like the fact that tonight, everything that came before us, we had a representative of that group here. I think that shows.
They've been here a while.
Well, right, that's another point. They stuck it out to the end here. But I like the fact that, you know, when things come before us, somebody's representing that request.
It's good.
And the times that people don't show up, to me, I just don't believe we should even deal with it. But, thank you.
You want to make a motion?
I'll go ahead.
Okay. Counselor Whiting?
Make a motion to approve resolution number R 2018-40 to enter into an agreement for $73,003.96 with Doggy Doo Spa and Retreat for the purchase of equipment, and authorize the mayor and city administrator to execute various agreements, including the UCC filings against the equipment once it has been purchased.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Luce. Further discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you. All right, moving ahead then to, monthly financials was on consent. We have item 8B3, and Mr. Reynolds.
This is actually up for council, Mr. Mayor. The staff has no recommendation one way or the other on this. It is a request from Councilor Luce, and ultimately is up for council's determination.
Counselor Luce?
I previously had gone to Dorn's Properties and looked at a couple of theirs in Hopkins and 610, and there was no problem in reimbursement. When I went to Common Bond, I got an email that said it should be fine, and then when I went to the Benedictines to check out their projects, this came up that it has to go before this group. So I don't know where the difference lies. Dorn was okayed with no problem. Basically, you know, we're all invited to go look at these. I had the time. I decided I wanted to check them out and do my due diligence. And, you know, I'm just requesting the travel reimbursement for fuel usage and, you know, whatever the norm is.
Okay. We all travel around to look at different places, and, you know, I'm not one big one to submit mileage for my driving around, viewing, or any of these projects either, but, Counselor Whiting?
I appreciate you going to check these out. You do your diligence, that's for sure. I know in the past, and I don't know if it's actually a policy, but when we've had training, or Met Council, or not Met Council, but League of Minnesota Cities training or events, or Metro Cities events that we're representing the city, or something to that effect, then I think we've had that reimbursement. I don't know that we've self-generated that by stuff that we've proposed to go look at, so I guess that's my concern with it.
Councilor Mokel.
Do we have a policy on mileage reimbursement, Mr. Reynolds?
The only policy that we have, Counselor Mokel, is that if we have a sponsored event, if you, for example, we have the policy that talks about the stipend. It's $50 for everyone that goes to that. For that meeting, if you are, and that's a council-approved meeting, and if you are doing that, you certainly can submit reimbursement for those because those have all been approved by council.
Well, you would take stipend for that.
Well, you could actually get travel reimbursement for that. That is approved by council as part of that stipend. It's also an approved meeting.
Liaisons, we're talking.
No, not liaisons, no.
Apologize.
And we can certainly have a policy that does that. But as it stands now, we do not. And I inadvertently approved Councilor Luce's travel to the Doran project without looking too closely into our policy at the time. And then when we had this slew of other travel, it became clear that that was not something that I had the ability to approve. So that's why it's here.
All right. Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I think I've had a mileage reimbursement maybe twice in all the years that I've been here, and a long time ago. To me, it was just more of a hassle to put it in than it was worth.
I don't think I've ever even used it.
I hate to say that because you got to keep track of your beginning mileage, your ending mileage, your date, where you're going, and fill out a form, and it just wasn't worth the effort on my behalf. It just wasn't. But I might submit one for the being at the Capitol the other day.
But that's why I asked the question about the liaison, though. Are you the liaison to the 169 corridor?
Yes,
So
and I
you went-
brought the fact up to this body twice that I was going to go to the Capitol
Right,
lobbying
right,
for
right.
169, and nobody said don't go. You
Right,
know?
no, right.
No, we said go.
Right.
Right.
You know, and I think that I drive around a lot.
I don't claim anything for schools or things that are close by. You know, it's just if I'm going a ways.
Right.
You know, but then I probably won't either because, like I said, it's more of a hassle than it's worth. And I figure the per diem or whatever we call it covers it anyway. You know, that's kind of how I look at it.
Councilor Luce?
Yeah. Counselor Lehman said you have to keep track of your mileage. They've changed that situation. Use Google Maps and they give you the mileage and they go off of that. So there's no possibility of, errors in the system, so.
Unless Google makes an error.
Your call.
All right, well. Looks like we had a discussion on it and we'll take no action. All right, moving forward, the city bill list is here for our perusal. Liaison report and administration report, Councilor Lehman.
April 11th, I did attend the 169 Corridor Coalition.
You got a win out of that.
We did get a win out of that. The two actually. The Transportation Alliance showed up on our behalf, which was pretty nice. You know, I don't know how successful we were, but the other day on the radio I heard there's talk at the state legislators about a potential constitutional amendment for a gas tax dedicated just to transportation. if that was what they came up as a compromise for a funding source, because they were asking, you know, how would you fund these needs and stuff, and it's a good legitimate question, because you do have to pay for it, and how do you fund it? And we got into the legacy constitutional amendment that passed a few years back, where 60% was transportation, 40% was hunting, fishing, and natural resources.
Yeah.
So I asked, where did that money go? Didn't get an answer, but regardless, you know, you've got to have some kind of a funding mechanism, and I've just flat out told them, you know, if it's a gas tax, if it's you know, an allocation from at the state level, the bottom line is these transportation improvements need to happen, and I don't think, at least I as a taxpayer, probably one of the conservative taxpayers that don't like to pay taxes for some things. You know, most people, reasonable people, don't mind paying a tax if they know what it's going for and it's something that they utilize and benefits them. And that's basically what I was telling these folks is, so, you know, it's good to see that they're actually talking about it and trying to come up with solutions. So it's not a done deal, but it is being talked about, which is something. So I feel pretty good about that. I did attend a school board meeting on the 9th. A lot of what was discussed was in the paper. They talked about their final 2 candidates for filling in the position, the empty school board position for the interim. Talked about the $2.6 million reduction and some add-ins. A lot of the add-ins, at least on the sheets that I was looking at, were moving people from one place to another. So here it was a reduction, and here it was an add. In our world, as council, it would be a neutral. So, you know, they're making some efforts to make some reasonable cuts, and, you know, they've got a tough road ahead of them. So we'll see how that pans out. I'll just reiterate, I would like to see any future tax dollars on the Canterbury TIF that should be going to the school district. We all know they need it. So that's all I have, Mayor.
All right, well, thank you very much. April 4th, I attended the River Valley Festival. This is a town festival event. They had a fundraiser. Also, I attended a Scale Executive Committee and handed over President gavel to the mayor of Jordan, Tanya, and she's the new president of Scale for 2018. On the 11th, I met with John Albinson, who was the lead promoter of Valley Green Business Park. He is now retired. He's a friend of mine, but at the end of my meeting, I really thanked him on behalf of the city. We talk about the diversity of industries that we have. They're not all in the Valley Green Business Park, but the Valley Green Business Park is vital to our community, and looking back at his efforts, he was involved in our community for 20 years. Very thankful for what he developed, this type of companies he had. Very thankful for that. The other night, I attended the Scott County Historical Society event. Great organization there. Did you have a question?
You may want to tell the residents where Valley Green Business Park is. I don't think a lot of people understand where that is.
Okay, sure, certainly. It's on the east end of town, south of 101, kind of tucked in really kind of east of 83. A little hidden gem in Shakopee that they do pay a lot of taxes, employ a lot of people, a lot of different industries back there. So thank you for that. And that's my report. Councilor
Thank you,
Wyden.
Mr. Mayor. Went down to the Main Street businesses meeting the other day, and they were talking about a spring event. They are looking at a farmer's market, potentially at the Lewis parking lot. There's also a new business coming in downtown at the River City Center. It's called Stacked Consignment. It's for plus-size women. So We're getting a couple women's fashions businesses down there. There's still some interest in the bakery. That's not a done deal yet, but they're looking at putting together a property map so that when people are looking for business opportunities, they can go somewhere to look at a map and see what's available, maybe some numbers on there for them, just to let people know what's out there. I also, I didn't have a MVTA meeting, but I did notice that the Suburban Transit Authority sent out an email talking about some of their funding mechanisms from the state, and so they got some of the money that they were hoping for, so that's a advantage for our suburb to suburb transit, especially some of the pilot programs that they had. On another business note, I do want to talk about the snow event we had. I'm sure Mr. Lillehog was happy to see that coming in the spring and everything, but I want to, a lot of people get upset when it's their road's not the first one plowed, but we do have a policy out there, and I think it's important that we stick to that policy, and we're plowing the roads that we're doing, and I want to put out a thank you to our team again, and they did a great job, because that was a lot of snow.
It's heavy snow, too.
That bogged down my snow blower quite a bit, so can't imagine what it did for when you see it all melted away, and we get an event like that. Our team does great work, and I want to make sure they know that, so
Well, thank you. Counselor Mokel?
I did not have anything to report this week.
Thank you. The administrator report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just a few quick things. First of all, we're diligently working on securing a AAA tax rating for this fine city. The finance department has been working very hard in coordination.
Bond rating?
What's that?
Bond rating?
Correct. Did I say something different?
Tax rate.
Oh, I'm
Tax
sorry.
rating.
Tax bond.
Long taxes are on my mind too. A AAA bond rating, and so we're working with our financial advisors and putting a plan together to make that happen, and we will. No pressure, Darren. Our auditors are in the building this week, so they'll be with us for the next couple of days. They may reach out to some of you to discuss if you have any concerns. As you will remember, we have a new set of auditors this year. We thought it was prudent to change our auditors to get a new fresh eyes looking in, and so we've been in the process of, not me, finance department has been working very hard in getting them prepped and helping them out today and this week. We have a lot of great employees, and I always, once again, love recognition and being able to talk about them. Kansas State University College of Engineering will be honoring one of our newest department heads, and Steve Lillehog is one of 10 who will receive a Professional Career Accomplishment Award from his alma mater. That's an exceptional honor, and once again, it's great to have quality, outstanding people working for this organization, and my hat's off to him, and congratulations.
Did you say Kansas?
I'm sorry?
Did you say Kansas?
Yes.
Correct, yes.
Do they have snow there?
How we do this year?
Ice.
All
Tornadoes.
right. Nothing else before this part?
I have,
I'm sorry. I apologize.
I have two other things. Really quickly, I wanted to read a letter that we just got not too long ago, talking about recognizing another one of our individuals, and I'm not going to talk about names specifically, but once again, this is a member of our extremely professional police department, and the impact that they have on young people's lives. And this is coming from Chief Tate, who sent this to the officer to recognize her activity. Chief Tate states, "I recently received a phone call from an individual who wanted me to know that you have made a significant impact on his life. He said it was you that helped him avoid trouble and suggested to him he would make a good cop. He went on to say that he experienced a lot of issues with his peers, and you encouraged him through those tough times. He went on to say he is a person of color, and you assisted him in overcoming the stereotypes he saw on TV and his own beliefs. He joined the military, and he is currently a military police officer. He intends to become a police officer once he is done fulfilling his commitment to the military. Chief Tate goes on to talk about how great it is to receive information like that. Once again, you know, that's why we do this. And hats off to our extremely professional police department and who makes a difference in people's lives. Finally, as you know, the last time we were together, you approved the Parks Planning Committee. I need 2 individuals that are looking to serve on that committee from this body. So, you know, if you're interested, please let me know. If I only get 2, great. If I get more, we'll bring it to the body and you can decide who's going to go. So thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Anything else before this board? Huh?
Make motion to adjourn to
May 1st.
May 1st, 2018 at 7 PM.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Lehman. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned at 10:34.